Chapter 1002. 6 hours ago, London. In the afternoon, under the warm sun, under the umbrella at the edge of the square. Jaeger raised his head and poured the espresso down his throat. His slightly pale face became slightly more energetic. But looking at the person across the table, he couldn't help but have a headache. To be honest, this matter is very big and very troublesome to deal with. Mr. Russell, you should know the consequences. He sighed and said, in broad daylight, the leader of the Heavenly Kingdom lineage and the head of the Directorate of Defense got into a fight in London, especially when you and your student lined up to stab the head of the Directorate of Defense in the throat. Well, even if he was in the wrong first, this is not the way to solve the problem. There is a lot of debate in the decision-making room about how to deal with this matter now. Even if Minister Yushing didn't appeal or ask for an investigation, there are still many people who want to be punished severely. It doesn't sound very serious. At least it's not as serious as the fight between the Egyptian branch minister and the Roman branch minister. I have to say, the scene at that time really opened my eyes. Russell held the teaspoon and stirred the black tea with a calm expression. Jaeger shook his head. It's not the same thing. Of course it's not the same thing. Russell smiled. At least you can't treat this as a simple conflict, right? Or is it that the string of power in some people's minds is always tight and won't relax? You and I both know that whether this matter is a big deal or not depends on how big it is in the end. He said, if you say it's a big deal, then it's a big deal. But in reality, was it a big deal? The Astronomy Society was an organization that gathered the legal forces of the entire territory. Was there a lack of internal conflicts? Especially the internal conflicts of the Directorate of Defense, which had not stopped for decades. It was not a day or two that the branches secretly had sprouts, even when fists and kicks were exchanged in the central decision-making room. Was it rare? It was not a big deal as long as no one died. Huaisher stab was not a big deal. It was normal for young people to be hot-blooded, but Russell stab was different. The key was that his identity was now more and more sensitive. Nominally, he was also a member of the Astronomy Club and the principal of the Ivory Tower. He had many connections and a wide circle of friends. No matter where he went, he would be popular. Actually, all sides wanted to rope him in. But now he was about to become the de facto leader of celestial genealogy. Even if the utopia was gone, he could no longer be viewed from the same standpoint as before. Thus, the matter became serious. That day, the director recalled the helplessness of being dominated by the utopia and the humiliation of being treated as a stinky younger brother. Why was the director a second-class person, while the utopia was above everyone else? This was still a problem left behind by history and could not be resolved. In addition, with the rise and expansion of celestial genealogy, they would definitely try to rebuild the utopia. And this process would inevitably be accompanied by the shaking of the directorate's authority. Even if there was a great disparity between the two sides, as the highest authority in the Tianwen society, the central decision room would not lose its leadership position because of this. However, the pot was only so big. If 2 pieces were not enough, wouldn't there be less on other people's plates? Jaeger's meaning was very clear. A portion of the directorate had decided to use this incident as a spearhead to attack Russell and suppress the development of celestial genealogy. From my personal point of view, I don't want the Astronomy Club to have internal conflicts at such a critical time. Jaeger said bluntly, if celestial genealogy can develop and grow, we'll naturally be happy to see it happen. We won't even be stingy with sharing a portion of our resources to meet your needs. Now that the situation is difficult, the more forces there are, the better. But others might not think so. The Secretary General of the Directorate, the de facto spokesperson of the Central Decision Room, said, I'll help you, but You have to give me an explanation. Explanation? How? Russell shook his head indifferently. Did you call for everyone to vote for you when you were running for president? Sorry, I don't have the habit of canvassing votes for my competitors. Let's change the conditions. Yeager had wanted to become the president of the astronomy club for a long time, and he had never concealed this point. As the leader of the Reformist Party, he had always advocated reorganizing the internal structure of the astronomy club and, at the same time, streamlining the Directorate of Astronomy. If he wanted to make so many drastic changes, it was obviously not enough to rely on the position of Secretary General to balance the internal voices. The position of president, which had been vacant for many years, was the best choice. All these years, he had been committed to this. This was not some wild ambition, but just the goal and demand of a politician. Who dared to say that they had never wanted to be the president of the astronomy club? As the leader of a faction, he had a reason and an obligation to fight for this position. Russell, you should know that this is the best choice. Yeager solemnly promised, if I can become the president, at least during my term of office, celestial genealogy won't have any obstacles in rebuilding the utopia. I know you are dissatisfied with the Directorate of Astronomy, but even if you run, you won't succeed, even if you have the Book of Destiny. Russell was silent. He just quietly drank his black tea. After a long time, he sighed softly. Change the conditions, Yeager. Russell shook his head. I don't have any objections to you. The achievements and sacrifices of the Directorate of Astronomy over the years are obvious to all. I know very well that even if the utopia can be rebuilt, it may not be able to return to its former glory in my lifetime. You are indeed the most suitable candidate for president. But no, if you can succeed, then I will obey your orders. If I fail, then I will wait for the next election. He said, but if it's not someone from the utopia who is the president, then I can't recognize it. That's all. He could accept reality, but he absolutely could not give up his obsession with that position. This was the last bit of backbone left in the utopia. Even if it was meaningless, Russell could not lower his head. The burden of passing down the legacy. Yeager sighed. I can understand, but my promise is still valid. Russell, I look forward to the reconstruction of the Kingdom of Heaven's genealogy, and I also look forward to the revival of the utopia. This has never changed. Don't worry, I won't make things difficult for you. Russell shook his head and smiled. He suddenly asked, I heard that the decision-making room has proposed to activate the border defense line in advance. Yeager was silent for a moment. He glanced at him strangely and sighed, silently. How was he able to know such a top-secret information that was rarely known even within the Directorate of Defense? And why was he showing off in front of him? Please, can you not be so flirtatious? Could it be that in Russell's eyes, the decision-making room was really a sieve with holes all around? However, since the other party had already asked so openly, there was no need for Yeager to hide the news that was going to be announced tomorrow. The pressure is greater than expected, he said. Although the bronze eye is still collecting more data, there should be no less than 2 elemental destruction involved in this War of the Worlds. Many rulers have already chosen to join forces, and we can already foresee that the situation will be difficult. Otherwise, the 5 pillars would not have relented on the matter of restarting the presidential election. Then it seems that things are really serious. Russell nodded and did not say anything else. Drinking tea. It was as if he was looking for a topic to chat about. Yeager looked helpless. I know you want to take more initiative and try to get more benefits, but you don't have to do this in front of me, right? Can't take it anymore. Russell smiled. My bladder is not good. I need to go to the toilet. Yeager said, We've already drunk 5 or 6 cups of coffee. You have to talk to me about serious matters. Well, the serious matter is about the border defense line. Russell said straightforwardly, I have a way to expand the range of the 3 blockades. Yeager's movements froze. In the long silence, he looked up at Russell in front of him in silence. What? Unbelievable? Russell asked. No, I'm just wondering if you're bluffing me. Yeager said straightforwardly. You have a record of this, but I hope you won't joke about this kind of thing. The 3 blockades were of great significance to the present realm. Even the existence of the border defense line was only a city wall, but the 3 blockades were the foundation of protecting the present realm. If the power of the 3 blockades could spread to the present realm, then whether it was defense or counterattack, the present realm would have a strategic advantage. Whether it was the physical rules brought by Zarathustra suppressing the chaotic phenomenon of hell, the real-time transmission of the Bifrost map, or the huge threat to the rulers of the world from the destruction of all things. All of these would bring about a huge boost. But the key was that there were not many who could achieve this, the hell outpost of the Utopia. Yeager asked, during the heyday of the Utopia, huge outposts were built in different depths of the abyss. They were like signal base stations, transmitting power from the present realm to hell at critical moments. As an important base and transit station for the pioneers of hell, they had once played a huge role. But with the collapse of the Utopia, those outposts were abandoned and destroyed. They were basically unusable and turned into ruins. Indeed, someone had proposed a restart plan, but it was rejected because of the huge cost and the low success rate. Yeager did not understand why Russell would take it out as a bargaining chip. The outpost isn't something that can be destroyed so easily. Apart from the branch nodes, there are a total of 46 special outposts. They were built on top of hell and merged with it. When they were built, they considered the possibility of encountering force majeure, so they all used the concealment technology of the Continuation Academy. When you need to evacuate, you can curl up your own dimension and return to nothingness. The interior will be sealed for more than 100 years to ensure its integrity to the greatest extent. Unless you have the activation key and the map, you won't be able to see or touch them even if you stand in front of them. Russell did not hide anything. All the distribution maps and keys are intact. When the kingdom of heaven fell, I personally excavated them and kept them until now. According to my investigation, there are more than 20 outposts that are still intact and can be used. They only need a simple activation to be able to function perfectly. In other words, Yeager, I will give you more than 20 important strategic fulcrum points. Yeager was stunned for a long time. Faced with this sudden news, he did not know whether to be shocked or grateful. He also did not understand Russell's purpose for doing this. Don't worry, Yeager, this is not a deal. Russell spread his hands and smiled. How about just treat it as a gift? I don't ask for any reward or gratitude from the Bureau, nor do I expect you to give me any power or praise. I just want you and those scheming guys in your decision-making room to understand one thing. Even if the Utopia was no longer around, it was not so easy to forget its brilliance. Chapter 1003. The Brilliance of the Utopia. Yeager sighed softly, and his expression became strange. It was just as Russell said. Even more than 70 years after the fall of the Kingdom of Heaven, this world was still built on the foundation laid by the Utopia. The 3 major blockades were still properly maintained, and the plans left behind were also carried out slowly and methodically under the implementation of the Union administration and the Continuation Court. No matter how arrogant a person was, they could not deny that this was the most dazzling essence of the astronomical society. It was a romantic soul that was close to a miracle in this cruel world. No matter how long time had passed and how many changes had occurred, the Utopia's imprint still existed in the bones of this world. But what did Russell want to express at this moment? Was it a brilliance or a shadow? If this was used as a response, this huge gift would definitely make many people laugh until they couldn't close their legs. But why did it feel like something was wrong? It was a toothache. Just like a popular joke on the Doomsday internet, there was an engineer buried in an oiled paper bag in the Roman sewers. When the sewers were blocked, the engineer would dig out the oiled paper bag and let him go down to pass a few times. It was obvious that the spirit of the craftsman was terrifying. Doomsday was not good enough. After all, who would have thought that the previous team would only produce a pair of fours, and Russell's side would immediately explode? This was not the way to play this card. You know the rules? But no one could refuse this generous gift that exceeded their expectations. Similarly, they could not ignore the hidden warning behind it. This was a thick haze under the brilliance. For those guys who held the threat of celestial genealogy not long ago and chattered endlessly at the meeting, this was a fierce and swift slap in the face. It was just short of directly slapping their faces back and forth in front of the world's live broadcast cameras. It's been more than 70 years. What else have you guys been doing other than running around in circles and having meetings all the time? Do you really think everyone is thinking about the eggs in your basket? Why do you think this is the utopia? What the Union administration doesn't dare to do, the utopia will do. What the Union administration doesn't dare to do, the utopia will do. What the Union administration doesn't dare to do, the utopia will do. What the Union administration doesn't dare to raise, the utopia will raise 5 to 6 tanks of fish. This is utopia. Is it clear enough? However, even after being slapped by Russell until his face was swollen, he still had to squeeze out a smile and praise. Well done. Thank you, Daddy. Daddy is so generous. Daddy is so good. As for Renee, who was it? His neck is so long and he's not wearing a tie. He must be a slut who deliberately seduces you. Poke him with a pen. What are you waiting for? Apologize to Uncle Russell. You must have done it on purpose. Jaeger shook his head and sighed. What? Russell smiled innocently, as if he didn't understand what she was talking about. Just drinking tea. The corner of Jaeger's eyes twitched slightly, and he couldn't help but curse in his heart. This old bastard. Ever since Russell arrived in London more than a week ago, he had attracted a lot of attention and raised a lot of vigilance. No one knew what this old man was doing in London at this critical juncture after tricking the Golden Dawn. But who wasn't afraid? But after being nervous for a long time, he didn't do anything. After being here for so long, he just went around in circles every day, visiting relatives and friends, old friends in the decision-making room, old acquaintances on the elevated floor, representatives of the Continuation Institute, and representatives of the 5 major systems. Everyone sat together every day to drink tea, chat, play cards, and smoke cigars. It was as if he was on vacation. Other than that, he didn't do anything at all. He just held a trump card and didn't act rashly, waiting silently. He waited until the Bureau needed him the most. Then he stabbed Renee in the throat and directly created an opportunity to meet with the highest level of the Bureau alone. And this was Jaeger who took the initiative to come to him. Thinking of this, Jaeger couldn't control his blood pressure. That guy Renee was really pitiful. He was more pitiful than a screaming chicken and more pitiful than an unlucky bear. That old bastard was worried that he would not have a place to open his business. How did he end up running into Russell's muzzle? In the end, this time, he directly cooperated with his students to cause a scene in London and Ingzhou. He might even have to apologize later. The decision-making room would have to applaud from the side. Forget it. You'd better pray for yourself. To be honest, you're making me a little dizzy. Let me take a break. Jaeger raised his hand and rubbed between his eyebrows. He felt that the heat and energy brought by the espresso wasn't enough to consume his brain. After pondering for a long time, He let out a long breath and said straightforwardly, "This matter is too important. I can't give you any guarantees. I hope you won't scare." Pa! A briefcase was placed on the table in front of him. Yeager was stunned. Russell raised his hand and motioned for him to open it. After a brief silence, Yeager raised his hand and pressed the button. In an instant, the briefcase opened smoothly. The old documents and more than 40 keys were directly displayed in front of Yeager. F***CK. Yeager was so scared that his heart almost stopped beating. He suddenly closed the briefcase and looked around. Those who didn't know better would think that Russell was bribing him. Such an important thing, and you just put it in a crappy briefcase on the floor? Yeager was speechless. What else? Are you going to set up a ranking for it? Russell waved his hand and said without any attachment, "Take it, it's yours. Whether it's real or fake, you can verify it yourselves. I hope you can use it properly." Yeager didn't say a word. He took out his phone and used the fastest speed he'd ever done in his life to increase the security level of London to the highest level. He then summoned all the Type 5 sublimators he could mobilize. The remaining 10 seconds were so long that it almost made him sweat. He was afraid that a ruler would suddenly jump out and snatch the briefcase away in front of him. It wasn't until dozens of blazing flames descended from the sky and a huge shadow appeared from the void, sealing the entire square and ensuring the situation. After the briefcase was taken away with the highest level of security, Yeager breathed a sigh of relief. He leaned on the chair and shook his head tiredly. "You've made a fool out of the Bureau again. Russell." "What do you mean by tricked?" Russell glanced at him with a teacup in his hand. "You have to thank me." Yeager didn't want to say anything. No one could deny that this was a contribution and gift that belonged to celestial genealogy. After all, before this, no one knew about the existence of the Hell Outpost. It was even a secret that belonged to the managers of the Book of Destiny in the Utopia. If Russell didn't say anything, who would know? Even if he didn't take it out, who could do anything to him? However, the assets left behind by the Utopia were depleted every time they were used. If it was done well, the existence of the Hell Outpost should be able to bring hundreds of times more benefits and advantages to celestial genealogy. It wouldn't be like now, where Russell didn't ask for anything and directly gave it to them. He knew that the Bureau would pinch their noses and nod no matter how exaggerated the conditions were. "Thank you." After a moment of silence, Yeager sincerely promised, "I'll try my best to give celestial genealogy the compensation it deserves." Well, the Secretary General's thanks sound much more comfortable than others. Russell nodded and praised without hesitation. "As for the compensation, I hope it's as much as possible. I won't stand on ceremony. Even now, I still can't believe it." Yeager said, "This doesn't seem like your style." According to Russell's style of maximizing all benefits and never taking any losses, he definitely wouldn't have played such an important card like the outpost system so easily. If he could do it in secret and use it during the president election, he would definitely be a strong opponent. It wouldn't be like now, where most of the credit was given to the Bureau. "This means that people will always change, right?" Russell replied indifferently, "They're not my private property, but the relics left behind by my predecessors. If I treat them with selfish desires, it would be a true betrayal. Celestial genealogy's current strength isn't enough to use it, so it's fine to give it to the Bureau. It's built with the power of the present realm, so it should belong to the present realm. As long as it can be guaranteed to operate, as long as it can be effective, it doesn't matter who uses it." He thought for a moment and smiled. "A few days ago, I learned a principle from my students. Past achievements may be good, but the future is the most important thing. Yes, there's nothing better than the future." Yeager sighed and ordered a glass of whiskey. Then, let's toast to the future. Yes, the future. The two raised their glasses and downed it in one gulp. This meeting came to an end in such an unexpected way. In the end, after the two decided on some details, all that was left was the busy preparation work and the drafting of further plans. Unknowingly, the workload seemed to have increased by another wave. Jaeger sighed in melancholy and waved to the waiter. "Bill, please." "I'll do it." Russell enthusiastically reached out and took the pen from his hand, but he couldn't pull it out. He tried again, but found that Jaeger's hand was like an iron clamp. She clutched the pen tightly. He wouldn't let go. Russell looked up and saw Jaeger's stunned expression. His small eyes were filled with great vigilance and shock. "What are you trying to do?" "Don't be impulsive, Russell," Jaeger advised earnestly. "Let's talk things over." In the silence, Russell helplessly let go of his hand. "Forget it. You do it. It's only been a few days, and Renee's PTSD has already spread from person to person. The people in the Bureau are more or less retarded. Anyway, the rest of the plot is that during the meeting in the decision-making room, your teacher, smiled crookedly, shook my body, and exuded a domineering aura. Then, that group of old things kowtowed to me. To be specific, it's very cool, including the part where Renee bowed and apologized. I also got someone to record a high-definition video. You can learn from it when you come back." On the phone, Russell sighed faintly. "Young man, there's still a lack of maturity in acting cool. You still have to rely on the old man to make an appearance at critical moments." Weisher only felt that this old bastard's face was full of sunshine. He interrupted him unhappily. "Let's talk things over, okay? So, the job you gave me is to join this activation plan and lead a team alone to reactivate an outpost." "Nominally, yes," Russell nodded. "And when the time comes, the Bureau will also focus on promoting you as the chief contributor and the main representative." Weisher felt that something was not quite right. He couldn't help but frown slightly. "What about in reality?" "In reality, of course, I don't care if they die," Russell calmly replied while smoking his cigar. "No one really thinks that I'll do it for free, right? Our celestial genealogies tools. Ahem, the pillars of our sect, when did they have the right to order us around for free? This time, let them help you attract the firepower from hell. When we get out of here, we'll play on our own." He paused for a moment and said seriously, "There's a more important task for you to complete." "I knew it," Weisher sighed. Before he could complain about how evil this old bastard was, he heard the voice on the phone. "Also, I already have an idea about your advancement." Chapter 1004. Advancement. Weisher felt as if a lifetime had passed when he heard the word. "That's right, I still want to advance." Advance as an advance. Advance as an advance. What a distant phrase. With an old pigeon like Russell flying in the sky, he thought he would never get to advance in his lifetime. "Oh, you finally remembered that you, as a student, have been waiting for advancement for a long time? What were you doing earlier?" So, Weisher pulled a chair over on the balcony and asked directly, "Where's the material for the ocean divinity? What did you get from the Federal Bureau of Investigation?" "A bunch of stingy bastards. Let's not talk about them." Russell clicked his tongue and shook his head. "The Bureau wanted to give you that broken trident of Poseidon's to make up the numbers, but I didn't agree." "What the hell?" Weisher cried out. Not long after she sat down, she almost jumped up in fright. The trident used by Poseidon, one of the three gods in the Greek genealogy, it's already outrageous that the Bureau has such a treasure in their inventory, and it's even more outrageous that you don't want it. If you don't want it, what else do you want? Relax, Weisher. Russell shook his head helplessly. You have to look at the long term, right? It's just a broken trident that's been broken for many years, sitting in the warehouse collecting dust. Its correction value has been drained by the three secret instruments, so it's just an empty shell, other than having some history and being able to make do with it as an antique in a museum to earn entrance fees. What else can it be used for? It's still much better than the other things. Huaishur held back a mouthful of blood and wanted to spit it on Russell's face from tens of thousands of miles away. That's the trident of the Sea King, Poseidon's trident. In the entire world, how many things are more important than that? Do you think you can pull out the sea-stabilizing divine needle from the dragon vein of Eastern Xia? Don't forget, Huaishur, there is a decisive difference between celestial genealogy and other genealogies. Russell shook his head. Tangi should have told you that most of the celestial genealogy source codices don't choose the power of the gods, but rather miracles witnessed by humans. Whether it was the Road of Heaven's Inquisition with the 9 songs as the source, or the Road of Dusk with the Song of Nibelungen, and so on as the source. Compared to the side of the gods who controlled the current situation, what was more important was the side of the gods. Too much divinity is not a good thing for you. Besides, now that the Greek genealogy has almost been integrated with the Roman genealogy, whether the remaining divinity can be compatible with Yun Zhongjuan or not is another matter. However, I did discuss it with Xian Niao, but Xian Niao didn't agree. After all, you don't look like you can marry into Dongxia, so we can only think of another way. Wait, did you just overstate something very important? Huaishur covered his face and sighed. Forget it. Just tell me the result. What did the Bureau give me in the end? A lot of nonsense. It's all about the cooperation with celestial genealogy. There are only 2 or 3 about you. Russell did not keep Haorun in suspense and said straightforwardly, I have already negotiated with the continuation court. The secret ritual of your advancement will be handled by the Astronomical Society. The Zarathustra secret ritual has begun to adjust its direction. Half of the distortions caused by the torrential rains and floods this year will be attributed to you. Huaishur was shocked. He really wanted to express his shock. But after being teased by this old thing so many times, he was completely numb. He was even too lazy to take a deep breath. After being stunned for a long time, he finally realized how exaggerated this was. By modifying the secret ritual of Zarathustra, the source of the damage was changed and directed to Huaishur, with the involvement of the continuation court. Although it was impossible to imagine what kind of technology was used to achieve it, it was definitely not simple. That was a super large enchantment that covered the modern realm and protected the entire world. It was actually changed for Huaishur's advancement alone. Even if it was only half, it was already exaggerated enough. It was equivalent to using half of the world's torrential rains for a whole year to prepare the environment and conditions needed for Huaishur's advancement. Not only was it enough for the secret ritual of Yun Zhongjuan's advancement, but once Huaishur succeeded in his advancement, this distortion that spread throughout the modern realm would instantly push Yun Zhongjuan to an unprecedented peak. He would instantly reach the maximum level after the advancement. As for the abyssal erosion caused by the distortion, there was no need to worry at all. The celestial genealogy's resistance to abyssal erosion was originally the highest among all the genealogies, and Huaishur's deluxe version was simply maxed out. The degree of erosion that would solidify in a minute on others was not even enough for him to yawn. Pay-to-win players were just that unreasonable. Moreover, there were a large number of secret rituals in the divine mark, Heaven's Inquisition, that required a large amount of distortion to be released, so there was no need to worry about not having a place to use them. Huaishur had always been a little resistant to outrageous things, so he did not deliberately collect them. He did not expect Tianxing to be so quick to directly blame more than half of the disasters in the modern realm on him. It was equivalent to Tianxing lying on the modern realm's ear, pointing at Huai Shi, and saying, "Yes, big brother, this is the one who beat you up." Although it was not quite right to think this way, it was always a good thing, right? He rubbed his eyebrows, finished calculating in his heart, and finally digested the news, then asked, "Now that we have the secret ritual, I have the light crystal, the foundation of the celestial palace is completed, and Xiangjuan's stigmata relic has been recast. Where can we find the materials for the ocean divinity? You're not going to let me directly advance, are you?" "Don't worry. I have prepared the best for you," Russell answered calmly. Huai Shi's phone vibrated, and a document marked as confidential was sent to him. It was about the arrangements for the secret battle, Outpost Restart. Although the meetings were usually endless, when it came to critical moments, the response speed of the Bureau was still astonishing. In just a few short hours, they had already drafted a comprehensive plan and entered a state of intense preparation. The timing was almost accurate down to the hour. The document sent to Huai Shi only included his part, but the general outline of the plan could still be glimpsed from the introduction. 3 days later, starting at 4:00 in the morning, there would be a total of more than 100 teams gathering at various borders, and they would set off in batches. In order to ensure that as many outposts were reactivated as possible, the Central Command dispatched more than 3 times the manpower of all the outposts, and each team shouldered the responsibility of quickly rushing to the aid of the other teams after completing their mission. In order to avoid alerting the rulers of Hell, the number of personnel was again and again reduced. Although more than 100 teams sounded exaggerated. In fact, when scattered in the vast expanse of Hell, it was not even a few grains of sand in the desert. At that time, Celestial Genealogy would organize 6 teams to participate. In order to show respect to Celestial Genealogy, these teams would not be managed by the decision-making room, but by Russell. Even the original plan was to let them go through the motions, and the teams assigned to them were relatively close to the present realm and relatively more important nodes. But under Russell's strong arguments, they still won back a lot of dangerous missions. And which little cutie was responsible for leading the teams to carry out these missions? Huai Shi rolled his eyes. "Reactivating 3 outposts by myself, and the span is so far, and the depth is more than 10 miles apart. Why don't you ask me to send them off?" "Oh, you only need to go one," Russell said. "You don't need to go to the other 2. "Why?" Huai Shi did not understand. On the other end of the phone, Russell happily took a sip of the black tea, then crossed his legs and said, "Because I built the school's Hell campus there." Huai Shi's face twitched. "Damn it, I got caught by this old bastard." Although they looked inconspicuous, it was only after obtaining the depth map and the coordinates of all the outposts that they discovered that the 2 outposts that were so remote and strange in Inferno were actually the key points that connected all the outposts to the present world. In the end, after so many years, Russell had quietly bought the subbase. After more than 70 years, the subbase had already been upgraded to 3. In the end, he even pulled in a tool from the Bureau to open all the remaining links for him. Huai Shi began to reflect. What gave him the illusion that this old thing had integrity? What else? What about the remaining one? He asked, "What's that place?" "Well, let me think. There's nothing special about it. It's just a very ordinary outpost. It's especially ordinary, and it belongs to the group that's especially far from the present realm. It's also the part with the greatest risk." Russell said indifferently, "The risk is high, and the mission is heavy. Even if it fails, there are other nodes that can make up for it and maintain it, so it's not particularly important whether it's opened or not." "Then what am I going there for?" "Of course, the important thing isn't the outpost node." "Why, sure." Russell said indifferently, "It's the military base next to the outpost. Well, in the past, in the heyday of the Republic, in order to expand and explore the abyss, they bought a branch there. As far as I know, the warehouse there stores a large number of supplies, hells materials, and even weapons enough for us to squander for 100 years. Of course, that's not the main point. The main point is that the materials for your advancement are also there. Military base. The Republic's arsenal. Huaishur was already in a daze. He was dumbfounded, and saliva dripped from the corner of his mouth. Just thinking about the terrifying power it represented made his brain start to shut down. Yes, it's a little belittling to call it materials, but it's an out-and-out big block. Russell continued. From the very beginning, it was a strategic weapon built for a lone army to explore and expand deep into hell. It gathered the painstaking efforts and wisdom of many scholars and alchemists in the Republic back then. Throughout human history, there's no other advancement item that's more outstanding and suitable for you. There's such a thing. Huaishur was confused. Why haven't I heard of it before? This is probably why fate is so ridiculous. Russell sighed softly. A treasure built for the sake of expanding the abyss was instead drowned in hell. Back then, before Heavenly State fell, it had just been completed. After a hurried trial run, it was secretly sealed because of the Republic's split before it could be of any use. That was a secret project of the frontline base, independent of the outside world. I only unearthed information about it and its existence in the ruins and wreckage of Heavenly State. Its name is 20,000 miles under the sea. Of course, more people call it Deep Submarine Nautilus. Chapter 1005. Now, looking back at the fall of the Kingdom of Heaven, what was caused was not only the collapse of the utopia, but also the change of the rules set by an era. This change was not limited to the present realm, but even went deep into hell. It was not an exaggeration to call it a collapse. Not a single place escaped the aftermath of the collapse of the building. Although the division caused by the Golden Dawn was a key junction, it was only a fuse. What really pushed the utopia to the brink of collapse was the fourth project, Kingdom of Heaven, which was once given high hopes. The first project, the great mystic ritual, Zarathustra, said so, replacing the rules of the gods. The second project, the Rainbow Bridge, connected the present realm and the border, allowing the entire world to complete a true unity. The third project, the Silver Sea, endowed all humans with a common soul. It covered the entire realm and was everywhere. It suppressed all the poison that seeped in and protected everyone's will to the greatest extent. Every one of these projects was an unparalleled achievement. Even the fourth project, Kingdom of Heaven, that the utopia did not complete in the end. It was a library that integrated all the traces and records in the world, collected the essence of all the valuable souls and things, and stored all the true knowledge and history. Furthermore, it could extract the marks left by all the heroes and sages in history, iterate and evolve continuously. It was not an exaggeration to say that it could create an existence like the Savior, right? In fact, this is only the first stage of Kingdom of Heaven. During the long journey, Russell once said to Huaishur, "If that's the case, it's at best a job that can be completed with time. Although it's great, it's not qualified to be called the fourth project." Even though it was so exaggerated, it was only the foundation of something truly great, a blueprint, a key to the future, an experimental product. The real purpose of the fourth project is to create a true kingdom of heaven with the power of man. A true kingdom of heaven? Huaishur was confused. The kind where milk and honey flow in the river? I'm not a core participant, so I can't describe it to you in detail. But after the fall of Kingdom of Heaven, I met the gray-robed man once and asked the same question as you. Russell smoked his cigar and sighed softly, the man in gray told me that the so-called heaven is a world where hell does not exist. This was the real purpose of the fourth project. At the same time, it was also the ultimate goal of the utopia. It was the origin of the name celestial genealogy and the significance of its existence as a tool. Breaking away from the cycle of life and death, there was no need to destroy the world and then rebuild it. Instead, it was eternal hell, creating a brand new world without hell. Even Russell, after so many years of pursuit and exploration, could not imagine how to fulfill such a despairing wish. How to do it, how to achieve it, and what method to use to achieve this goal. Everything had become a mystery with the disappearance of the last president of the Astronomy Association. No, perhaps when Kingdom of Heaven fell, it had already been declared a failure. Because of the betrayal of the Golden Dawn, there was an aberration catalyst hidden in the Kingdom of Heaven from the very beginning, which had the possibility of becoming a destructive element. During the long period of creation, it had been hiding in the shadows, absorbing nutrients, slowly sprouting and spreading. It was not until the moment Kingdom of Heaven was tested that the aberration from hell erupted from it. What it brought was a terrifying contamination that instantly spread across the borders of the present realm and hell. All the institutions and important equipment connected to Kingdom of Heaven were unprepared for the erosion. Whether it was the terminal that gathered 15% of the computing power of the entire realm, or the various institutions in the present realm, or even the ivory tower of the logistics base, or the outpost deep in hell. Every part of his body was pierced by the sharp blade that came from his back. In order to reduce this damage to an acceptable level, countless people made huge sacrifices, but the collapse of the utopia was still unavoidable. In the end, Perron, who was originally the guardian of Kingdom of Heaven, betrayed his duty and completely destroyed the Kingdom of Heaven that had been preserved after sacrificing so much. From then on, he wandered the borders and became the leader of Green Sunday. After 70 years, the pain caused by the fall of Kingdom of Heaven to the Astronomy Association had yet to be healed. And 70 years ago, chaos also happened in hell. As Kingdom of Heaven transformed into the element of destruction, all precious records fell into chaos and madness for a short time. In order to isolate the chaos, the source substance network managed by the three wise men had no choice but to ruthlessly separate itself from the present realm and move to the borders. Even so, contamination was inevitable. To this day, the dark net was a key monitoring target of the Central Bureau. Once the three wise men were no longer able to control the spread of the residual poison, they had to be completely destroyed in order to prevent it from completing the transformation of the element of destruction. At the same time, the vast majority of souls chose to leave Kingdom of Heaven and preserve themselves. Their whereabouts were still unknown. Or he might as well be like the traitor Yi Ji and turn into the Golden Dawn. What was more serious was the deep backflow phenomenon caused by the failure of the defensive measures. The deepening of many depths triggered a chain reaction in the abyss. More than a dozen sleeping rulers were awakened, and the chaos in hell triggered a disaster that spanned dozens of depths. Most of Utopia's research facilities in hell were attacked. If it were not for the limitation of depth, the present realm might have even ushered in another war of the worlds at its weakest. Ing Fangzhou died in battle at that time in order to protect the outpost where he was and buy time for others to evacuate. Even so, less than 1 in 10 people who successfully withdrew survived, and the losses were heavy. The Nautilus was sealed at that time. Russell sighed, softly. In order to prevent it from going out of control or being distorted, it was urgently anchored in the base before the test flight was over and quarantined. After the evacuation, there was no more news. Did the evacuees not return? Huaisher asked. They are not on the list of returnees. Russell was silent for a long time before sighing softly. They're probably dead. I see. Weisher was silent for a moment before telling him, Don't worry, I will bring it back. Not only that, Weisher, the mission you shoulder is more important than you think. Russell said, Among all the teams, only you are not allowed to support other teams. No matter how close the distance of the distress signal is, you must not waver in the slightest. Understand? You have to complete your mission at all costs. Even if all your teammates die, you can't turn around and give up. When necessary, you even have to take the initiative to sacrifice them to protect yourself. Your advancement is the first priority, and so is your safety. You have to understand that you represent more than just yourself. Luo Su asked, Can you complete a mission like this? Weisher was silent and did not speak, and Russell did not speak again. He just calmly and coldly waited for his answer, until Weisher spoke. I'm sorry, Russell, he said, but I can't promise you this. Even if it was a companion he met by chance, he could not guarantee that he could coldly turn around and leave when the other party sacrificed himself in front of him. Russell did not fly into a rage. He just sighed. It was as if he had expected this and knew it would turn out like this. Then try your best to do it. Do it your way and do it beautifully. He shook his head helplessly. Now that things have come to this, I can't say that you can't do it and replace someone else. To celestial genealogy, you are irreplaceable. Why, sure, I hope you can also understand this. It sounds like I've caused you trouble again. Weisher asked. Yes, big trouble. But what can I do with a student like you? Russell laughed self-deprecatingly. The worst thing is that I actually feel quite happy. As a teacher, I don't know if I should be proud or ashamed. In short, you go and do your work. Leave the rest to me. In fact, the most dangerous part of the entire mission was not the route. It was the process of returning. When they went, it was a secret operation. But after all the outposts were reactivated, even a blind person would be able to sense the waves clearly. At that time, the rulers participating in this War of the Worlds would definitely not let it go. Forget about the others. Weisher's target was the biggest. After all, the size of the Nautilus was there for all to see. You drove a submarine under the nose of a large group of hell. Was it possible? There were only two choices left for him. Either he completed his mission as quickly as possible before all the outpost networks were reactivated and returned with the Nautilus before attracting attention, or he could stay in the base and wait for the War of the Worlds to end before returning. It would definitely be safe and risk-free. However, it would be too late by then, as the signature of celestial genealogy, being absent in such an important battle was itself a sign of incompetence. This is the so-called spinning a cocoon around yourself. Why, sure, you have to bear the consequences of your own decision. Russell finally reminded him, no matter what happens, I will leave a key position for you on the opening stage of the War of the Worlds. As for whether you can make it back in time to complete the advancement, it will depend on you. Don't worry, it's just courting death. I do this all the time. Weisher laughed. After hanging up the phone, he leaned on the chair on the balcony and bathed in the sea breeze blowing from afar. For some reason, his mood gradually became better. After hanging up the phone, Russell raised his head and looked at Isaac's projection. Look, I told you, he wouldn't agree with that method of doing things. If you insist on doing so, I will not object, but please approve my application to join. Isaac replied expressionlessly. This mission is too important. I think Weisher will lack the necessary decisiveness at critical moments. Isaac, I won't approve such a ridiculous thing. Well, even though I'm ridiculous, you're the vice principal, you're my agent. When I'm not around, you're my incarnation and my limbs. Now you're telling me that I'm sorry, I'm going to hell with you. Then, who else can I leave the celestial genealogy to? You can transfer Madam Chun or Mr. Ramanujan back. They have their own jobs. Besides, they don't have your patience. Apart from you, no one else can handle such a huge amount of work. Russell said, helplessly, I know you're concerned, but relax. This isn't his first time out. There's no need to make a fuss. You and Katia are the same. Huaishur has the ability to solve this problem. The question is whether he is willing or not. Most of the time, he will put his emotions and likes before anything else, ignoring the weight and responsibility on his shoulders. Isaac said coldly, with all due respect, this is not the way a leader should do things. Then what should he do? Be decisive? Be ruthless? Be like me, a nuisance no matter where I go? Russell smiled indifferently. On the contrary, Isaac, this is what I admire most about him. No matter what, he will always put his own will above the group, no matter how exaggerated the weight on the other side of the scale is. He does this not because anyone expects him to do so, but because he has decided to do so. In my opinion, as a leader, that's all you need to do. If he is always easily interfered with by the likes and dislikes of others, how can he control the direction of the future on behalf of more people? Apart from that, what he lacks is nothing more than a little experience. In the middle of the night, on the other side of the reality, Russell leaned on the chair and said with a smile, Don't worry. You need to give him some time. He will do well, better than you can imagine. After a long silence, Isaac nodded. I will. The projection disappeared without a trace. In the quiet room, Russell closed his eyes and hummed softly. Chapter 1006. After Huaishur and Russell had a final communication, the matter was finalized. In the following time, Huaishur also ushered in a period of intensive preparation, preparing the equipment and supplies needed to set off to hell. Of course, before leaving, he did not forget to give his dear students extra homework to ensure that they would not have the energy to make trouble. Yuan's workload was already bursting, and little 19 was recently unable to leave the dojo and the 6E society, so the focus of attention became the problem girl, Anya, too addicted to the game, especially too addicted to the game of freeloading teachers. He must be disciplined. After Yuan was in charge of the curriculum and little 19 was in charge of the internship, Uncle Fong was in charge of the daily life. If Uncle Fong wanted to take care of a student was a child in my eyes, so I asked Uncle Fong to take care of the student for me. This kind of logic was simply flawless. But the old man looked like he wanted to say something, so Huaishur could do nothing. He had already tried his best, and the last thing he had to face was the most troublesome person for Huaishur. Have you been avoiding me recently? Tangi looked at him with watery eyes. Did I do something wrong? Why are you ignoring me? Huaishur covered his face. Do you have other birds outside? Tangi seemed to understand something. She choked on her words, tears glistening in her eyes. Bao, it doesn't matter if you have other birds outside. As long as you occasionally come home to see me, Mother Crow will be very... That's enough. You're getting more and more unreasonable. Huaishur rolled his eyes. Also, get off of me. Hurry up. I want to ride a horse. At this moment, in the middle of the night, under the moonlight, Huaishur was lying on his bed with his limbs spread out. He maintained this posture after waking up from a suffocating nightmare, and Tangi was sitting cross-legged on his chest. No matter how Huaishur struggled, she seemed to be glued to him, not shaking at all. In the end, Huaishur gave up first. Forget it. Do as you wish. He closed his eyes and lay flat. Do whatever you want. I'm sleepy. I want to sleep. Hey, don't be so cold. Tangi lowered her head and blinked. I also feel that my status as the big sister has been shaken, and I want to quickly increase my screen time. Why aren't you saying anything? Are you angry? Her long hair cascaded down her shoulders like a stream, brushing past Weischer's face and tickling his face. He could only open his eyes helplessly. Oh, I understand. This is the rebellious phase, right? Tanguy suddenly understood. The books say that as puberty comes, boys are too ashamed to talk about the changes that have happened to them. While they crave independence, they also start to become curious about the other big sisters outside. Unknowingly, there is already a lamentable and thick barrier between us who used to talk about everything. It's ridiculous that you can even drive on this lousy road. Weischer felt like a pitiful and helpless child being run over by the wheels of a car. He could only raise his hands in surrender. I was wrong. Please don't drive. That's right. In front of big sisters, you have to learn to be honest. Do you want some fruit? Tanguy took out an orange from nowhere. No, you eat. Huh. Ahem, I'll eat. Weischer admitted defeat in time and avoided another car accident. After stuffing the entire fruit plate into Weischer's mouth, Tanguy put down her hand in satisfaction. She looked at his helpless face and suddenly asked, Weischer, are you happy with your job now? Why do you suddenly ask this? Weischer was slightly stunned, but after thinking for a while, he nodded and answered, If you want to say it, I'm very happy. It's quite a sense of accomplishment. It seems that you are quite handy. Tanguy nodded and sighed. Although it seems to me that saving the world is stupid, if you like it, I have no reason to object. Weischer was helpless. Didn't you throw me into the ivory tower? Ah, indeed. However, I originally only wanted you to have a fulfilling and beautiful youth. But now, it seems that it is indeed fulfilling. Whether it is beautiful or not is another matter, but your youth is simply gone. You don't even have the time to fall in love. Elder sister also feels very sad. You are not sad at all, and you are still smiling. Do you know what a bitter smile is? I feel sad. Tanguy forced his eyes open. You see, I can't stop smiling sadly. Weischer didn't expect this woman to have a conscience at all. So, you came in the middle of the night to laugh at me? What? This is called love and care, understand? Tanguy rubbed Weischer's face. Others treat my silly boy as a tool. They are all supporting your body. I am the only one who cares about your heart. If you have any sad things, you can talk to me and make me happy. You are becoming more and more heartless. But I can't help it. Some things can only be reaped by oneself. You won't change even if I tell you. You won't listen to me even if I persuade you. What else can I do but laugh? Tanguy was not ashamed. This is also a trial from fate. Do you feel better when you think about it this way? Not at all. Weischer struggled angrily. Then how about considering other ways of survival? Tanguy suddenly leaned closer, looked into his eyes, and whispered, Not only now, but at any time if you feel tired or painful and want to give up, there is no problem. Her face was just inches away from Weischer's. When her eyes blinked, a soft breath fell on Weischer's face. Weischer was not allowed to turn his head to avoid it. She said, If one day you don't want to do it, then you don't have to do it anymore. That's all I want to tell you. Weischer was stunned. Don't do it anymore? Yes. Tanguy nodded. Don't do it anymore. Then what about the others? Let them die. Expecting a person who doesn't even have a girlfriend to save the world, there must be something wrong with their brains. What about celestial genealogy? Just treat it as a freeloader. The path of heaven's inquisition is not their monopoly. Don't you care about the Republic? Why keep thinking about the old dreams of the era? You weren't even born when the Republic of Heaven fell. What kind of logic is it to ask you to take responsibility? Moreover, from the beginning until now, I have never said to you, look, there is a ruin over there. Let's rebuild the building. This is not your responsibility. Why, sure. It's just other people's expectations of you. If I have to say it, it's like giving up your seat on the bus to others. If you are willing, then go and move your legs. If you are not willing, then don't get up and let them wait. Tangi said, if you have to feel that you have any obligation to others, then it is only to me. Other than me, there is nothing else in this world that is worthy of your unconditional sacrifice and sacrifice. Then, if I don't have a job, what will happen to my life? Of course, sister will support you. Tangi took out her wallet and shook it. Thanks to you, sister has recently made a lot of money. You can buy any game you want. You can spend as much money as you want. What about eating? You have an old house, and you are still worried about eating? Noodles and drumsticks. Eat one bowl and throw away the other. What about a girlfriend? Huaishur asked, how can I find a girlfriend if I stay at home? A woman? Tangi was stunned and said seriously, a woman will only slow down your game playing speed. Only trash wants a girlfriend. A real powerhouse does not need a woman. This. Huaishur shrank back a little. Isn't it a little too big to suddenly go from a workaholic to a useless homebody? Tangi said, as long as you like it, it's fine. Huaishur was silent for a long time before suddenly asking, but what if I think it's good to do this? What if I like my current life? Then go and protect the world. Tangi replied calmly, under the premise that you can give up at any time. Do your best to do it. Spend a little effort and put in some effort. It won't affect your eating, sleeping, or finding a girlfriend. Just take some time out to do it. This way, even if you accidentally mess it up, you won't feel bad. What about you, Tangi? Huaishur asked persistently. What do you want? Well, let me think. Under the moonlight, Tangi held her chin and looked at Huaishur's face. Suddenly, she smiled happily. If you want to protect the world, then I will protect you. Huaishur was stunned. What? Are you stunned? Tangi blinked proudly. A real big sister will of course support you all the time. Don't fall in love with me, but why are you doing this for me, Tangi? Huaishur sighed. There has to be a reason, right? Because I am your contractor. Huaishur. She pinched Huaishur's face and told him matter-of-factly, just like you are my contractor. There was no more intimate relationship in the world. The next day, in the campus of the Ivory Tower, Raymond looked at Huaishur and asked in confusion, did something good happen? Well, someone bought me a game. Huaishur's steps were light. I'm not talking about that. Why are you smiling so happily? Because someone bought me a game. Huaishur asked matter-of-factly, isn't this something to be happy about? Is this something to be happy about? Raymond was at a loss. Huaishur thought for a moment and looked at Raymond's honor. For some reason, his expression suddenly became sympathetic. He patted him on the shoulder. Forget it, you won't understand. Raymond's expression twitched. He felt that he had been insulted, but the hateful thing was that he didn't know how to refute. It seemed that he had been bullied in the workplace. He didn't want to stay in the Ivory Tower. He wanted to smile, but when he thought of his heavy loan, he could only give up. There was no other way. The sorrow of middle-aged people was so deep. What was worse was that after being patted on the shoulder by Huaishur, his face turned pale, and he almost couldn't breathe. Everything went black. Hey, what's going on? Huaishur was stunned and immediately panicked. You're not going to blackmail me, are you? Ask yourself, bastard. Raymond coughed violently and glared at him. What kind of damned thing is on your body? The radar embedded in his eye sockets was frantically alerting him, and everything was blood red. It was in Huaishur's pocket. It was like a pitch-black vortex, constantly pulling in the surrounding origin substance and pouring it in, brewing a disaster. It was a curse that had already taken physical form. The instant that it touched Huaisher, the abyss maw in Raymond's body actually showed signs of going out of control. What kind of damned thing had this guy stuffed into his pocket? Chapter 1007. HM, are you talking about this? Huaisher reached out and seemed to take something out of his pocket. Raymond's eyes reddened and tears almost flowed out. It wasn't because he was scared, but because it stung his eyes. The built-in mirror in his pupils was already overheating. In Huaisher's hand were 2 magazines. Inside the crystal-like magazine were 2 rows of bullets. It seemed to be made of some kind of metal, but it didn't have the reflective luster of metal. Instead, it was completely dark, sucking in all the light. Was that solid, liquid, or was it just a wisp of mist? Or did it really have a solid body? The moment he saw it, he could feel his soul being pulled in. Void return. Raymond lost his voice. You're so ruthless? To take your own. Wait, don't tell me it's Lu Baiyan's thing? More or less. After Huaisher tossed it a few times and satisfied his low-level desire to show off, he sealed it again and threw it into his pocket. Wasting was shameful, but making the best use of everything was the right way to run a household. Moreover, would it be a waste to kill such a big, great seeming? He had to warm it up a little. The main raw material came from the origin crystal extracted from Lu Baiyan's soul by Yangsheng forging. Great Seeming's Yangsheng refined Great Seeming, which was the most extravagant matryoshka doll in the history of the path of astronomy. What Great Seeming obtained was a strange existence that looked like an ink block after gathering all of Lu Baiyan's resentment and solidifying all of Great Seeming's distortions. Under the support of the sealing hand, the alchemy fire, and the forging furnace, all of the energy was extracted and not a single bit was wasted. Even the screams and pain before death were perfectly preserved in the sealing hand. The ink stick contained all of Lu Baiyan's souls and the skills of an abyss painter. Apart from Great Seeming's innate ability to deal damage to the creatures of hell, it was also incredibly corrosive. Huaisher used some of the ink stick to draw a few lines on the ground. The depth of the space around it began to destabilize, and the places that the ink came into contact with were quickly assimilated by origin substances. If Huaisher was an abyss painter, he would definitely be able to use this even more perfectly. Unfortunately, he was just a broken zither player. He cut 1/5 of it and divided it into 2 sections. One section was given to Little 19 as a curse vessel, and the other end was given to the abyss painter in the school's oil painting department. The rest were all refined into bullets by Huaisher using the casting technique. Using the casting furnace below Dombwa smelting, it took a full half a month to completely take shape. What he obtained was the 11 calamity crystals that were comparable to the Directorate of Command's numbered spell bombs. Take from hell, use from hell. It would be best if he could return it to the traitors of Golden Dawn. Put such a dangerous thing in your bag. Raymond glanced at him and realized something was wrong. Wait, where's your bag? Huaisher's saddlebag, which he usually carried when he went out, was not with him today. It was taken by Mr. Sharma. He said that he wanted to maintain and modify it. Although Huaisher used the word said. In fact, there were 2 sudden knocks on the door yesterday, and a note was pasted on the door asking him to take it out and put it on the ground. After that, the item disappeared with a swipe. No one looked at it. There was no problem in handing it over to him. Although this backpack from Ms. Chachel was a gift from the creatures of hell, the transformation was originally completed by him and other alchemists. After using it for so long, it really should be taken care of again. Moreover, for a sublimator like Huaisher who had maxed out his survival status, The effect of praying once every half a month was not very effective after passing the puberty period. Now that there was a creator who was willing to renovate it for him, it couldn't be better. But he said that he would give it to me today. I don't even know where to find him. Before Weisher could finish the word take from his mouth, his neck suddenly sank. Without any warning, a bag hung on it. After a long period of sluggishness, Raymond and he looked at each other in astonishment. How did he do this? Wait, let me see. Weisher took out his phone and used his authority to connect to the framework of the ivory tower and began to search for information on the interior of the tower. In the end, he played the video at 200 times the speed, but still couldn't see any signs. It wasn't until Weisher adjusted the magnification to 800 and looked at the video frame by frame that he saw a blurry figure. And there were only 2 frames. In one frame, he slowed down, one hand pressing down on his headscarf, and the other hanging the bag around Weisher's neck. In the other frame, he turned around, pressed down on his headscarf, and assumed a sprinting posture. And then there was nothing. It could only be said that the creator could really do whatever he wanted. He came at the speed of light and left at the speed of light. Seeing this, Weisher began to doubt his life. You have to use your own framework to partially accelerate time just to deliver something. Just how unwilling are you to talk to others? I'm willing to call you the strongest autism. Weisher cursed in his heart, but he still raised his head and waved at the sky to express his gratitude. It had to be said that Sharma really put in a lot of effort. After all, it was a relic of his ecology teacher back then, and he didn't do it half-heartedly. Now it looked as if he had taken a cotton swab and dipped it in maintenance oil and cleaned it inside and out several times. It was spotless and looked brand new. He even repaired the parts of the skin that had fallen off. There was no flaw at all. If it weren't for the weight and feel of it, as usual, he wouldn't have recognized it. Moreover, there was a 200-page thick instruction manual stuffed in the outer bag. Weisher took it and patted it in his hand. The Book of Destiny automatically read it. Excluding some unimportant information, there were a total of 2 changes. One was the internal space expansion and weight reduction, expanding to 20 cubic meters, but the usable space didn't change at all. This was because Sharma had stuffed a set of simple alchemy arrays and external equipment for the casting furnace into the remaining space. It was convenient for Weisher to maintain his equipment at any time in hell or make preparations according to the situation. The effect of the prayer item had been revised. The time was still the original time, but after sifting through a wide range that was originally not used at all, it was limited to the Hell Exploration Equipment Manual. Everything that could be used in Hell was there. Things that couldn't be used in Hell were also useless, and the quality was much better than ordinary civilian goods. It was completely strengthened for the exploration of Hell, and the most attentive part was the inside of the shoulder strap, Ms. Chatchell's name. The part that was originally almost invisible due to the friction was re-outlined with gold stamping, and it was also reinforced and protected by law. It ensured that her name would never fade. This is just like a medal. Weisher beamed with joy, without the slightest displeasure. He solemnly hung it on his shoulder and finally waved goodbye to the sky. Thank you. Oh, there seemed to be a distant response in the wind, but it was not clear. It was like an illusion. 2 hours later, after seizing the time to deal with the last things, Weisher followed the instructions of Vice Principal Isaac and went to the bottom floor of the ivory tower. The former station was now empty. Only a few people sitting on boxes were chatting. When they saw Weisher, they waved their hands. They were the members of the headquarters who went to Hell with Weisher this time. Except for Raymond, the veteran tool and driver, the rest of them made Weisher's eyes almost pop out. Professor Anton Weischer did not even have time to greet the others. He looked at the white-haired scholar. "You're going too?" "I'm already a bag of old bones. I want to warm up a little." The old scholar from the Russian Federation took off his pipe and greeted Weischer. As cheerful and talkative as ever, he said, "I'll be counting on you to protect me from now on." Weischer instinctively could not accept it. Professor Anton was his first friend and supporter in the academy. Other than Ms. Olivia, Weischer was able to establish himself in the ivory tower so quickly because of his help and support. Although he did not know his age, his granddaughter was older than Weischer. She had just gotten married last year. The old professor did not retire and continued to work hard in his position. After all, teaching and educating people all over the world might be a bit of an exaggeration, but it was not a problem to cover half of the present world. What if something went wrong? Relax. Weischer. It's just going to hell. It's not like I haven't been there before. I participated in the design of most of the outposts back then. It's no big deal. Professor Anton patted him on the shoulder and smiled slightly. "Without me, who will help you drive it back? Since this is your request, I will not object." Weischer nodded helplessly. Indeed, Professor Anton was one of the most suitable members. Although he was not as diverse as Vice Principal Isaac, Anton had been immersed in the field of machinery all his life. He had obtained almost all the degrees in the internal discipline. It could be said that he was a fully automated giant mechanical processing plant. The Nautilus had been sealed for so many years. Without his maintenance and repair, Weischer might not be able to drive it. The next two were also Weischer's acquaintances. "Long time no see, Mr. Forster, Mr. Gregory." Weischer placed his hand on his chest and bowed. Other than Raymond, everyone here was an elder. He did not dare to put on any airs. Forster was the chief engineer of the Iron Crystal constellation. He was specially transferred from the Grand Master for this mission. He was an experienced Tier 4 sublimator. He had terrifying combat power that could intimidate the Great Azura. At the same time, he had the most experience in exploring and surviving in hell. Now that the Iron Crystal constellation was completely connected to the Sky Fortress, it did not have the ability to sail independently. The Grand Master could not find the time. Otherwise, they would have just sent one submarine and 2 submarines back. As the person in charge of the Iron Crystal constellation's electrical and power equipment for so many years, Forster's arrangement could not be more appropriate. The Iron Crystal constellation was recreated by Mikhail based on the prototype records given by Russell. It was limited by material resources, and there were many differences. It could only exist as a mobile research center. However, the internal structure and general operation were similar, and there was no difficulty in familiarizing with it. The old cowboy with a cigarette in his mouth gestured to Weischer and greeted him. "We'll listen to your orders from now on." As for the last one, Gregory, this was the alchemist who herded sheep in the wilderness of the Russian Federation during the road trip with Russell not long ago. He was still wearing a leather robe, his hair was messy, and his melon seeds were all over the ground. However, the herd of silly sheep was no longer bleeding beside him. The moment Weischer saw him, he subconsciously pulled up his pants. The psychological trauma was huge. At that time, he only came into contact with him for less than half an hour, and all the modern technological equipment on his body was completely scrapped. Even the chemical fiber of his pants was directly disintegrated, and he became a primitive man. It should be said that he returned to the most ancient era. The essence of the Chaos Curse was the most ancient prototype of alchemy. It had the most exaggerated destructive power and was the closest to the essence of the gods. At the same time, the more profound the study of this type of alchemy was, the more the body of the alchemist would be traced back to the legendary human state of the Golden Age. While bearing many miracles with the body, it would also reject and suppress all non-alchemy products. The final effect was that as long as he was around, all modern achievements would rapidly become ineffective, including pants. He was simply a mobile civilization, EMP. And the key was that this state had a high priority in the present and hell. There was no way to suppress it. It was ridiculous that he could appear here. Chapter 1008. How did you do it? Huaisher was surprised. He looked around and found that the ivory tower did not explode. Nothing happened at all. Don't worry. That old bastard, Russell, gave me this. Old Shepherd's Gregory raised his wrist, revealing a wristwatch-like ring-shaped lock. 2 of them were swirling on his hands like liquid. When the 2 rings collided with each other, a spherical space vaguely appeared around him. To be precise, it was countless silver specks that danced like dust, just like the stars in the sky. Just like the smell of summer quilts came from the corpses of mites, the countless silver specks were also made up of countless corpses, combining Sharma's recycling ecology and the primordial soup created by Shah, the creator of the Survival Academy. These 2 useless rings were created, countless silicon-based cells that had been modified by the primordial soup formed a reproduction system. Fixed by the recycling ecology around Gregory, they were constantly self-replicating. Then, they were quickly killed by the characteristics of the primordial curse, and the remains were then recycled and remade, forming a dynamic cycle. Using DOS attacks to fight against EMP, using science to defeat magic. As long as I replicate fast enough, you won't be able to delete me, thus reaching a balance of life and death. Instead of forcibly suppressing the attributes of the primordial curse, it was better to take the initiative to find something for it to do. If it was too busy, it would not harm other innocent equipment. Although I still have to take it off when I'm working, it should be fine as long as I run far away. Gregory spread his hands. It just so happens that I recently had a big fight with the Stone Cauldron Academy. Everyone is a little embarrassed, so I'll follow you to hell to lie low for a while. Then I'll leave it to you. Huaisher nodded and formally greeted the seniors in front of him again. As for Raymond, he was just a tool. This was the lineup of the exploration team. According to Russell, there would be several groups of guides waiting for them in hell, but only a few of them would be responsible for activating the outpost and retrieving the Nautilus. Raymond was the driver and backup pilot of the Nautilus. Anton, the mechanic, was responsible for the temporary maintenance and repair of the Nautilus to ensure that it could return to the present world in one piece. Forster, the iron crystal pilot, who operated the internal equipment of the Nautilus to maintain its sound operation, and Gregory, the alchemist, who was responsible for destroying arcana and miraculous replication, as well as the jack of all trades come Captain Huaisher. Everyone had an irreplaceable role, and it seemed that the only thing that could be missing was himself. However, so many people had come here to achieve themselves. To be honest, he was under a lot of pressure. Although the team that Russell had chosen for Huaisher would definitely not have any disputes or conflicts, it was precisely because of the trust and cooperation of the old seniors that Huaisher was somewhat fearful. 3 days was barely enough for a few people to arrive at the ivory tower. Fortunately, everyone was already very familiar with each other and did not need much run-in. 3 minutes later, Isaac hurried over with a box. After opening the box, there was a row of syringes that had already been filled. The liquid inside was surging with a dark gray color. No matter how one looked at it, it did not look like a good thing. This is a necessary confidentiality measure. The internal arcana is provided by the Bureau to ensure that everyone will not divulge the mission and goal under any circumstances. At critical moments, you can self-destruct to avoid more pain. Time is limited. Please inject yourselves. It was still the same straightforward style of introduction, but everyone here was already used to it. No one thought that this was looking down on them for not cooperating. They skillfully picked up the syringe and stabbed it into the artery. With a click, Weischer felt a gray aura spread out in his body and soul, enveloping everything, but it quickly disappeared. However, with just a thought, after 3 confirmations, he could instantly ignite himself from the inside and turn into a green smoke of nothingness. This time, he could not let his imagination run wild. If he was not careful, he would really kill himself. Fortunately, this thing was only effective for a month. After a month, it would naturally degrade and disappear. However, a month was enough. Even if they completed the mission and returned in advance, they would still have to enter confidential surveillance until all the plans were completed. I don't need to say anything more. I sincerely hope that everyone can return safely. In the end, Isaac took a step back, put his hand on his chest, and bowed. I wish everyone a safe journey. As he spoke, the steel dome opened to both sides, and a huge airship slowly descended from it. According to Russell's instructions before he left, Yoko Kusanagi and Sharma worked overtime to repair the big guy, the hellish environment inspection airship. The interior was equipped with enough deep survival equipment and all the necessary tools to last for 3 months. According to the records, the furthest safe travel distance was even past the withered area and deep into the dark abyss area. A large number of special monsters with the characteristics of Ingzhou were spat out on the airbags. At first glance, it was obvious that it was the work of Yoko. Take it and use it. The old lady with a cigarette in her mouth threw the key over and took one last look at her work. Anyway, it's a one-time use item. After checking all the supplies and materials 3 times, the huge gate opened with a bang. In the silence, everyone looked at Weischer. Weischer chuckled softly and lifted the bag in his hand. Let's go. Outside the gate, there was an endless light. The dedicated Bifrost provided by the General Administration had been opened. The flashing rainbow light wrapped around the airship and pulled them away in an instant. It was unknown if there were any new changes after the divinity of the source substance had undergone a qualitative change. But this time, Weischer could clearly see the changes in every place. In an instant, countless scenes flashed by in the light, as if they had traveled to every corner of the present land in an instant. Following the network that connected countless borders and the present land, they had already arrived outside the present land in the blink of an eye. The sound of the tide was surging. After the dizziness that felt like the world was spinning, they could see the endless sea raging below. They had once again arrived at the endless sea that shrouded the Asian border. But it was different from the last time. This time, there were no clouds in the darkness of nothingness above their heads. Countless shining stars seemed to be right in front of them, pale, scarlet, dark green, and ominous radiance constantly flashed. That was the distance between hell and the present land. They were almost right in front of them. Just behind them, there was still an endless stream of behemoths flying out from the gate of the Bifrost. Like giant pillars, they spewed flames and rose into the sky, forming an endless array with countless giant pillars floating there. The rainbow light between them formed a giant net that shrouded the sky. After a long warm-up, the branch components from the Bifrost finally formed a brand new expansion link. In the future, the power of the present land shrouded this endless sea. The defense line is about to be activated. We have to speed up. Forster, the chief engineer, turned around and said to Raymond, "If we're any later, I'm afraid we'll be locked in the gate." Raymond nodded and pulled the operating lever all the way to the end. The huge airship trembled violently and quickly began to fade. Like a chameleon, it hid in the void and disappeared. The anti-force coating was activated. After passing through countless shrinking holes in the net and sending out a final signal to the present land behind them, the airship entered a state of silence. Everyone's heart sank. From this moment onwards, they would lose all assistance from the present land and truly step into hell. They were not falling, but rising toward the ferocious stars. But behind them, there was a vast and terrifying wave, as if the present land was collapsing and echoing in the void. It did not use sound waves as a carrier. Instead, it overlapped the ripples of countless source substances and turned them into a tide of source substances that could drown every soul. It spread in all directions. It was like a song. At that moment, Weischer looked back in shock. From the reverberating rhythm, he felt the sound of a certain behemoth. It was a sound from the present land, under the pull and cover of countless Bifrost links. It was as if a chain so long that the beginning and end could not be seen was bound to the endless sea. Then, with infinite force, it pulled the sea inward. No, it should be said that it was like a quilt. The monstrous tide rolled up, and endless waves of light surged along the links. Under the control of gravity and the Bifrost, it was like a thick quilt covering the present land that was shrouded by the three major seals. It was not only the endless sea here, but also the melting mountains in the far Middle East, the endless wilderness in the Russian Federation, and even the eternal white fog that shrouded the American border. With each border as a node, the Bifrost links were spread out. It involved the world formed by the materialization of the borders and rolled inwards. In the end, the 6 sides closed, forming a self-operating cube that completely enveloped the present land. At this moment, in the magnificent changes that were difficult to observe even if one exhausted their vision, Weischer finally understood why the countless borders were regarded as the city walls of the present land. It was not just the relationship between space and the inside and outside, but even the domain between the borders was the city wall itself. At this moment, in the abyss that was comparable to the void of the universe, surrounded by the ominous stars, there was only this existence that was difficult to be accommodated by one's vision. Compared to it, any existence was just a drop in the ocean. It was the world itself after the border and the present land combined. The present land's defense line. The defense line was officially activated, which meant that from this moment on, the present land had officially entered a state of war. Around the present land, above the shell formed by countless borders, there were already countless dark clouds slowly shrouding it. Before the deep tide reached the present land, the rulers and large groups in hell were still unable to release their power on a large scale. However, this did not prevent them from beginning to gather their power, forming an alliance with each other, or beginning to communicate with each other. The leaders of large groups who occupied the geographical advantage had already sent invitations to powerful existences deeper in. Some of them were even the claws and teeth of some behemoths in the dark abyss. In front of the stars, layers of shadows surged. Strands of aurora-like bonds extended and entangled with each other, shrouding the dark abyss in a dazzling light. Unfortunately, it was not the gate of paradise. It was the stairway to hell. Chapter 1009. Looks like there is indeed a golden dawn at work here. In the central decision-making room of the Directorate of Governance, the observation results from the bronze eye were presented, and the upper echelons of the present realm were whispering among themselves. Not only the various departments of the Astronomical Society, but there were also commissioners from the 5 mainstays, as well as emissaries from the 5 major lineages. The Egyptian commissioner, who had calmly entered into an autistic state, was holding 2 positions, and was even communicating with the Directorate of Governance's commissioner beside him, and then signing an agreement. Long before this, Egypt had already entered a standalone mode. Although he did not know what kind of agreement the pharaoh had reached with the Silencer Stone tablet, the fact that the precursor assembly had approved his proposal was ridiculous. But what should be done still had to be done. In 1/6 of Hell's defense line, the Golden Desert was already filled with Egyptians. According to the Directorate of Governance's observation, they had even moved 1/3 of the pharaoh's tomb, which was indestructible. Even if destruction wanted Su-Apophis to crash head-on, there would be no problem. If you want to die, the pharaoh will die first. They have already put up their ancestral tomb. What other requests do you have? Are you even human? They had invested more than twice the resources of the other lineages in exchange for this impregnable defense line. And in exchange, the Directorate of Governance would not interfere with the internal affairs of the Egyptian lineages and territory. The pharaoh naturally had his reasons for doing so. This was not surprising or noteworthy. Similar conditions and exchanges were more or less in other major lineages, such as the Dragon Vein of Doomsday, the Divine Sarcophagus of the Russian Federation, the Solar Almanac of the Americas, and even the 6 Wonders of Rome and the Land of Wolf's Blood. Everyone more or less had some assets that they did not want to show easily. The simulated starry sky has also been spread out in the present realm, right? Mystic Niao complained to the head of the Hall of Discipline beside him. You should at least control your astronomy enthusiasts. Last time, flaws were seen in the stickers made by the War of the Worlds, and in the end, it took us a long time to pacify the theory of the end of the world. Definitely this time, definitely this time. Now, the starry sky of the present realm had probably undergone all kinds of incredible changes, right? Behind the curtains of the Astronomical Society, the countless stars were already frighteningly bright. When Hell was closer to the present realm, this distance would be reflected on the stars. In any case, the mystic bird did not even need to look to imagine the scene of the Keiturahu slaughtering its way through the sky. It could only be said that this version of the game was simply too unfriendly to it. His strength was greatly reduced, less than 1/10 of his original strength. In any case, that was what he said to the Directorate of Command. Whether others believed him or not was another matter. Hey, everyone's here. The noble blood priest from America sat over and said with a smile, about the water thing we talked about a few days ago. I'm not talking. Get lost. A row of rolling eyes interrupted this boolsh *T topic. An ear-piercing alarm sounded from the projector again. Origin substance rippled like a geyser, spreading out from the vicious stars of the infernal realm. A massive shadow began to emerge from the darkness. It spread its huge wings that were full of cracks and deformities and soared freely between the depths. The ferocious body tore apart the rainbow light that shrouded the border. Emerging from the endless fog, a strange face that seemed to be made of countless squirming flesh extended out of the darkness. Looking down, overlooking, they brazenly crashed into the border defense line. What they triggered was an earth-shattering shockwave. Unexpectedly, the moment the border defense line was completed, it triggered an attack from the abyss. The origin substance spectrum analysis is out. The band matches the one in the database. The bronze eye analyst hurriedly adjusted the angle of the projector, projecting the newcomer's full appearance onto the screen. A monster that rose from the dark abyss, a creature of immortality, a poisonous species of decay, a bone eater, and even the final title among the countless names, ruler, rotting dragon. Even across the countless barriers of the border, they seemed to be able to hear the furious roar, as well as the endless hatred and anger contained within. Even though it couldn't shake the thick city walls, it still madly crashed into the defenses in front of it. Countless pieces of flesh and blood fell from its wings, passing through the white mist and rapidly multiplying on the strange earth, forming countless mutants. In less than a quarter of an hour, it had already scattered pieces of flesh that were more than 10 times its own weight. It had planted thousands of times its own mutation and pollution, like sowing an epidemic. It spread disaster across the misty plains. Even from a great distance, Huaishur and the others could feel the terrifying impact and destructive power. But for some reason, when they looked at the observation image, they felt an indescribable sense of familiarity. Why did it act like the beast of immortality? It has something to do with the element of destruction, Huaishur asked curiously. Indeed, the one who answered was Gregory. The old alchemist said, according to the inference I obtained from the Continuation Academy, the beast of immortality and the rotting dragon have an inevitable cause and effect relationship. You've had contact with the beast of immortality before, so this similarity can't be hidden from you. Could it be the beast of immortality's offspring? Huaishur was speechless. No, the beast of immortality doesn't have the ability to reproduce. There's no need for that. The ability to reproduce is only meaningful for existences with limited life. For the beast of immortality, even the change of eras and the birth and death of the world would probably be able to survive. Moreover, it's already tired of living, so why would it have children for fun? Gregory pondered and organized his words. Strictly speaking, it's actually the beast of immortality's creation. Or, it used to be a part of the beast of immortality. It was a difficult task to define, the dragon of decay. Should it be called the shed of the beast of immortality or the product of suicide? Or rather, the failed product of a successful suicide attempt? Such an ambiguous statement really made people feel conflicted. But in fact, it was just that conflicted. The beast of immortality had been tired of living for more than a day or two, so asking the Continuation Academy for help was the last resort. Before that, it had already failed countless times in its attempts to commit suicide. There were 1 or 2 times when it was really about to succeed, but in the end, it still met with failure. It tried everything, but it couldn't kill itself. It could only bring itself closer to death without limit. After crossing that boundary with great difficulty, it was finally pulled back from the brink by the cruelty of life. What remained on the other side of the boundary was this corpse, an existence known as the rotting dragon. This piece of flesh that had been shed from the beast of immortality's body was no longer part of the beast of immortality's body. It had been entangled with a large amount of life and death, creating an appearance that was both, but at the same time completely different from the other. In short, it was canceration. It looked like it was alive, but it was constantly rotting. It should have been dead, but it didn't have the peace and serenity of the dead. And this life force, which was dead but not yet dead, continued to solidify the origin substance even to this day. Unlimited distortion, never-ending solidification. At the same time, it brought about unlimited pain. It was definitely the best specimen of the solidification and distortion that the abyss brought to life. It vividly displayed the true form of disaster. It was too much of a luxury to expect that thing to possess intelligence. It was born from death and possessed the dual attributes of life and death, as well as the dual attributes of pain. No matter if it was alive or dead, it couldn't be freed. The moment it was born, it only had one goal left: to take revenge on its creator, to return this unrelieving pain 10,000 times over. It sounds like it's quite easy to solve. Huaishur was dazed for a long time before he asked curiously, why can't the beast of immortality take it back? In the silence, Gregory's expression became very strange. This Huaishur, if you accidentally vomit something, even if you force yourself to eat it back, you'll only vomit more. All right, stop talking. I'm already about to throw up. Huaishur waved his hand, unable to listen any longer. If that's the case, you and he can be considered brothers. Gregory's expression was strange. After all, you also have a trace of the beast of immortality's flesh. Now that you mention it, it's even more disgusting. Weisher was already about to vomit. Fortunately, he didn't vomit in the end. Unfortunately, a piercing alarm suddenly sounded on the radar. Among the infernal stars in the abyss, countless tiny dots of light suddenly appeared in the void. Those dots of light rapidly expanded, forming ripples that surged in all directions. Wherever they passed, whether it was dust, grass, or even airships and warships hidden in the void, as well as all kinds of strange creatures lurking around in a mess, were instantly squeezed out. The originally empty void world became lively all of a sudden. Those who wanted to fish in troubled waters, those who wanted to loot a burning house, those who wanted to make a fortune. Everyone looked at each other in astonishment. They didn't expect to have so many neighbors. It was like a wet market. It was so crowded. What the hell? Weisher was dumbfounded. Why are there so many people hiding? Who knows? Hurry up and hold on tight. Raymond shouted in horror and roared, "What the hell is coming? It's coming for us." There was no time to pay attention to the border defense line and the war with the dragon of decay, because in front of the infernal void, in front of them, suddenly an eye that seemed to occupy an endless abyss slowly opened. The huge eye looked indifferently at the airship that was close at hand. The next moment, a destructive light gushed out. The light without any color or temperature spilled out from the eye of the abyss into the boundless void. Whether it was from infernal realm, the present realm, or the large group of people who were jumping left and right, or even the rulers who were watching from afar, they were all stunned. In the dead silence, in the darkness of the abyss that corresponded to the universe itself, there were only countless voices of panic, confusion, and anger rising one after another. Thousands of words converged into one sentence. "Damn it, what's going on?" After that, all the sounds disappeared. Chapter 1010. The bubbles shattered, and all things wailed. It was just a fleeting glance of disdain. Wherever the eye of the abyss's fiery gaze passed, everything was like lime thrown into the sea, quickly disintegrating and turning into dust. Among them, Weisher and the others were included. Raymond only had time to smash the glass with his fist and hit the emergency button. Then there was a loud bang, and a large amount of sticky foam spurted out from every corner, quickly enveloping them, condensing, and turning into a soft and tough medium. The world was spinning. The airship's figure flickered on the spot for a moment, overloaded, and suddenly appeared in another area 2 depths away. But the cold gaze from the corner of the eye still swept over. The airship shook again, flickered again, leaving behind a large pile of broken parts, and escaped 2 depths again, but the light from the corner of the eye was still blazing. Finally, there was an explosion in the spot. The core of the airship finally managed to evade the deadly shockwave with its final flicker. In the blink of an eye, from depth 1 to depth 6, everything welcomed a merciless and destructive attack. Even the dragon of decay was caught in it. It roared furiously. There were only a few survivors, and they were in a sorry state. It hit, just 16 depths away, in the vanguard army of the King of Withered. On the flagship of the Najilfa fleet, the Abyss Jester clenched his fists in excitement. Immediately, he heard the observation result of his colleague at another depth. No, it didn't hit. Among the messy communications, there were orderly communications and reports. Coverage attack completed. Most of the targets have been eliminated, the announcer said hurriedly. 16 fragments are falling down. For in the east, 3 in the west, 6 in the depth, 9 in the depth, 11 in the depth. The cannon fire on the flagship did not stop. Following the narration of the observer, a small-scale roll call began. In an instant, 8 of the large fragments or fish that had escaped the net were vaporized, but 8 of them fell especially fast and had already fallen into hell below. Action begins. The abyss jester's hoarse voice sounded. Quick, quick, quick! Everyone, surround them! Let the Sea of Titans cooperate with us to wipe them out immediately. Don't let the Calamity Sword escape. The threat level of the target is extremely high. The moment you discover it, retreat immediately and call for reinforcements. If necessary, you can use your last resort. Release the realm and capture Huaishur alive. After a short period of silence, countless question marks floated up from the origin substance transmission until the speaker coughed awkwardly. Dead ones are fine too. I can use them anyway. Tear him to pieces. In short, regardless of the cost, kill him and be done with it. As the abyssal jesters who occupied the middle layer of the major forces reached a consensus, countless large groups were mobilized and moved towards Huaishur. The killing intent was ferocious. Source of attack detected. Full coverage and saturation strike. It's the Najilfa fleet. The Withered King's Najilfa fleet. Suddenly, the silhouette of an abyssal crocodile emerged from the darkness. After a short period of dead silence in the decision-making room, they continued to operate in an orderly manner. Everything had already been planned, so what was there to panic about? 61,000 plans were piled up like a mountain, and they had already covered the majority of emergency responses. At this moment, even if they were slightly stunned, they were not panicking. However, no one could understand why such a large force would be exposed before the two sides had even engaged in battle. They didn't even attack an inch of land at the border. Instead, they first cleaned up the depths around the realm. Of course, the Astronomy Association had not been completely without losses, but this little bit of damage was not even worth mentioning. If such a terrifying force were to enter the battlefield at a critical moment, who knew how much of an impact it would have on the battle? However, no one had expected the Withered King of the Dark Abyss to arrive so quickly that it made one's hair stand on end. However, the exposure of such an important spy was meaningless. The only thing that could be considered a loss were the two exploration teams that had gone to the Abyss Restart outpost. One team was from the Command Bureau, and the other team was from the Celestial Genealogy. Jaeger's face was as calm as still water. He calmly issued another order and sent a new team to replace the position of the victims. In the decision-making room, under many sympathetic gazes, Russell was still talking and laughing with the people next to him. He only glanced at the screen and continued the conversation. Only those who were attentive noticed that underneath his calmness was calmness. He was very calm. He really wasn't panicking at all. You don't even care? The White City representative who was talking to him was dumbfounded. Care about what? Russell calmly smoked his cigar. The children of the Ivory Tower have been exercising since young, raised in the mountains, and raised healthily. In elementary school, they have to compete in summer camps with other border schools. They don't even care if they have a 90-degree fever. You know about radioactive waste, right? He drank it like water when he was 17 years old. A mere deep impact can't kill him. F***CK. The Ivory Tower is so F***King weird. The expressions of the people around him twitched. Come, let's continue talking. The import tax rate you mentioned just now is still a bit too high. It doesn't conform to the market rules. Russell suddenly sighed. For the sake of my student's face, how about we give you a discount? The middle-aged man's expression twitched, and he became sad. To be honest, among the people who just had an accident, one of them was my brother who worked in the Dark Army. When I think about his uncertain life and death, I can't sit still. How about another day? As he spoke, he wanted to get up, but she was caught off guard by Luo, so he couldn't even leave. The old bastard blinked his big eyes and sincerely suggested, as the saying goes, there's no time like the present. My student died, and your brother died. What a coincidence. Why don't we settle this matter? The middle-aged man hesitated for a long time and gritted his teeth. I can only give you a discount. I can't lower it anymore. I really can't lower it anymore. Then, how about you leave the fine processing to us? Russell went along with the flow. It's much cheaper than America. Just take it as your brother's life, and death is still unknown. Let's settle it this way. It can also comfort his soul in heaven. The representative of White City hesitated for a long time and squeezed out the words from between his teeth. My brother is not related by blood. In this way, the conversation continued. The war preparations continued. The world continued. Everything never changed with the life and death of a certain person. 6 hours ago, depth 14, Ice Gush Gorge. In the frosty wind, a deep crack suddenly opened in the air, revealing a dim scene that seemed to be inside the body of some strange creature. As the purple flesh wriggled, several bodies covered in mucus drilled out and fell to the ground, panting in embarrassment. The crack closed and disappeared. Strangely, the sticky liquid that stuck to their bodies rose against gravity and quickly disappeared. When the 6 people got up from the ice and snow, there was no dirt on their gray cloaks. The difficult trek in the long darkness just now was like an illusion. However, the real journey had only just begun. On the arm under the cloak, the insignia of the Dark Army was revealed. The exploration team from the Directorate of Defense, the 30th Outpost Activation Team. Captain Rod Providence, who was leading the team, looked around and looked down at his watch. Rest for 3 minutes. Stay alert. Exploration team member heard the news and died. The team members sat on the ground silently and took the time to rest, although they used a crack that they accidentally found in the past and directly crossed 12 depths to come here. The road ahead was still long. Tossel took the time to adjust the equipment, released a drone, and flew into the distance. However, only a vague outline in the distance could be vaguely seen in the snow. It was difficult to distinguish the details. It's not working. The density of the precipitation in hell is too high. The drone has lost signal. He looked up and reported, the equipment is not good. Rely on the naked eye. Rod looked down at his watch. It's time to rest. We should go. Exploration team member Alk Theros died. The team members packed up their equipment and packed their bags silently. However, when they stepped forward, they noticed something fine under the snow that was plowed by their feet. The exploration team members raised their weapons warily under the snow powder. Half of the dried plant roots were exposed. The frozen dried flowers still maintained their bright colors. They could almost smell the cold fragrance rippling in the cold wind. What? Don't be nervous. It's just flowers. Tossel breathed a sigh of relief and put away his weapon. Let's go. Exploration team member Tossel died. Okay, let's go. They turned around and led the team into the snow in the distance. Exploration team member Nisha died. For some reason, Rod yawned as he moved forward. Suddenly, he felt a dull pain on his forehead. It was like the aftereffects of a deep dive. His vision was blurry. However, something was constantly fermenting in his heart, an uneasy premonition. His footsteps came to a sudden halt as he subconsciously pulled out his pistol. However, there were no more footsteps behind him. In front of his eyes, the endless snow instantly disappeared without a trace. Instead, it was replaced by gorgeous flowers that covered the entire world. A sweet and seductive fragrance spread, and countless butterflies poured out of their mouths and noses. They were accompanied by sticky blood. The hell that was supposed to be filled with eternal snow was now filled with an endless sea of flowers. Rod fell into a daze. The vines danced like snakes and pierced into the bodies of the members of the exploration team. They rooted themselves deeply into their bones and brains, controlling their senses and reading the signals in their brains. A breeze blew, and the sea of flowers surged, making a noisy sound. Yen %% hashtag. Yen at hashtag. Yen hashtag asterisk. Here. Is there a natural passage here? How wonderful! The androgynous voice echoed in Rod's ears. You should be the people called the Astronomy Club, right? What are you doing here? At that moment, Rod thought of death. Exploration team member Rod died 4 minutes after entering the Ice Rush Gorge. After the second team, Postman, the third team, Cloud Prophecy, the 21st team, White Coat, and the 26th team, Gecko, the 30th team, South County, was all wiped out. Cause of death: bad luck. The deep dive brought them to the passing ruler of the Sea of Flowers. In an instant, they were swallowed by the Sea of Flowers. Fortunately, relying on the confidentiality measures of the Bureau, all the team members knew nothing about the purpose of the operation. The only one who knew the content, Captain Rod, activated the measures and self-destructed in time to keep the secret. Unfortunately, he died 2 seconds too late. Chapter 10:11. The short 2-second hesitation allowed the ruler to read a small number of fragmented memories, including 2 unimportant conversations, a sonnet poem, a painting given to a friend, and even a small part of the plan under the depths. There were also a few strange names. They're all useless. The amorphous Sea of Flowers fell into a short period of thought, then gave up. It was just a happy little flower, not good at thinking about such complicated problems. Your brains are very developed and useful. I'll leave it to you. It said to the Abyss Jesters who were loyal to it. A quarter of an hour later, the Abyss Jester Leukoplakia routinely uploaded the fragmented information to the shared dream of the Abyss Jesters. The fragmented information was mixed together with the fragmented information. Like the other incomplete information, there was no value in distinguishing it. After another 5 minutes, the alarm was triggered. An invitation to an emergency meeting was sent to all the Abyss Jesters within the 16 depths. Someone used his authority to convene an emergency meeting. In the hall projected by the dream, one figure after another appeared. The Abyss Jesters from the various depths had arrived here. They looked at their companions in confusion. "What's going on, Hades?" someone asked. "Is there some urgent imperial order from the Withered King to pass on to us?" "It has nothing to do with my employer." The alchemist named Hades said indifferently. "Something happened." What was placed in front of everyone was the fragmented memories of the origin form. There was also the name that was highlighted in red. "Why sure?" Leukoplakia asked. "The Sword of Disaster?" Someone said, "It seems that the workshop masters have offered a very high reward." The dozens of Abyss Jesters exchanged glances. Tiancheng, who was at the forefront of the Jesters, asked, "I've heard that you seem to have suffered at his hands." "I'm not the only one who has suffered at his hands," Hades said coldly. His expression was full of vigilance, like a cat whose hair was standing on end. "You haven't been in contact with him, so you don't understand. He's a threat, a disaster, an anthole on a dam. The point is, he's coming to hell," he said decisively. "I can assure you that something big is going to happen, something very bad for us." The Jesters were stunned for a moment before they were puzzled. "Is it really that exaggerated?" "It's that exaggerated," Hades said decisively. "I suggest that we increase our vigilance in the near future and increase our surveillance of all the entrances to hell. Prepare to deal with the Crowned. Once we find traces of them, we will eliminate them at all costs." Tiancheng pondered for a moment. "What's the reason?" "There's no reason," Hades said. "I don't have anything to convince you to be more vigilant. I don't know what he wants to do, and I don't know if he will come." Even the information itself was not reliable enough. This is all subjective judgment, personal narrow-mindedness, imagination, conjecture, psychological trauma, and intuition. Tiancheng shook his head. This won't convince anyone. But I can assure you, Hades replied. Someone raised his hand, curiously. Is he very strong? Hades was silent for a long time. People like him can't be distinguished by their strength. I can only say that once he appears, no matter how small the problem is, it will become a big problem in the end. Sounds a bit like those bastards from the Golden Dawn. Someone concluded. Almost. It's even more ridiculous than the Golden Dawn. Hades sighed. Trust me this time, really. I've been through this before, and I really don't want to go through it again. After a short moment of consideration, the jesters looked at each other and came to the same conclusion. Let's make the contract. Then let's make the contract. Hades raised his hand and swore to the element of destruction, the Pied Piper. Under the witness of all the mysteries, we will be honest with each other, work together closely, and never harbor any evil intentions. I promise that everything I've said is based on my rational judgment. I need your help, and when necessary, I'll definitely pay you back with an equal amount. The moment the contract was completed, everyone felt a gaze from the deepest part of the abyss. It was recognition from the Pied Piper. Even there was a hint of admiration in it. In any case, in the court where all members had to be equal and honest, Hades made a promise and guarantee, and everyone had to face this matter seriously. The jesters of the abyss were often known for their deceit and conspiracy, but in contrast, they respected the contract, as well as their respect for talent and ability. Even if they regarded other things as dust, those who could come to this hall must be in existence similar to themselves, and must be respected and valued, even if this concern had no reason or evidence. After a short meeting and discussion, the jesters who were loyal to the various rulers threw in their chips. More than 16 depths of hell were stirred and began to operate because of the name Why Sure. It was just an incomplete piece of groundless information, and they threw in such a huge amount of chips. It could be said that it was crazy. But was there a lack of crazy things in hell? Peace was not the norm. Perhaps Hades was oversensitive, but many of his colleagues had an unusual agreement and recognition for such a cautious attitude. Anyone could be oversensitive, but who dared to put in such a big bet because of an inexplicable premonition? At least at this moment, everyone had successfully reached a consensus. Although they did not know what had happened, but no matter the cost, they had to kill Why Sure first. In the loud roar, Why Sure fell to the ground. He tore open the solidified foam inside the airship with difficulty, climbed out with a dirty face, and encountered another wave of explosion. Bah, bah, bah. He spat out the ashes in his mouth and looked around. Is everyone okay? The victims raised their hands, indicating that they were fine. The old scholar Anton, who was closely protected by Mr. Forster, did not lose a single hair, but only a handful of the coffee cup in his hand was left. I was going to sleep later, but now it seems that I won't be able to sleep. Anton shrugged, regretfully. Without Why Sure's order, the others consciously began to count the losses. Fortunately, the important supplies were placed separately in Raymond's car of destiny for safekeeping. Although the dragon insisted that he fell to the ground and twisted his little finger, in fact, there was no loss. It was just that the airship that Lady Kusanagi had worked overtime to repair was gone. After Why Sure finished reading, he sighed. The good news is that we still have a car. What about the bad news? Gregory had already spat out melon seed shells all over the ground. Why Sure shrugged and looked up at the dark clouds above. If we don't run quickly, there will be no more cars left. The crisis of death came in waves. At that moment, above the wasteland of the unknown hell, the sky suddenly exploded, and the endless dark clouds shattered in response, disintegrating like steel. In its place were countless black dots that were rapidly enlarging. They occupied the sky, and shadows covered the earth like a pitch-black blanket, falling to the ground. It was an endless horde of hell. What the hell is that? Raymond poked his head out of the driver's seat, and when the radar in his eye sockets reported the estimated number, he instantly shrank behind the window and took a few deep breaths of the air conditioner. He stepped on the gas pedal. The heavy truck shook with a bang, and 6 flamethrowers flipped out and sped away. Slip away, slip away. At that moment, a high-pitched scream came from the sky, like the cry of a strange creature on the verge of death. Then a shadow appeared on the ground out of thin air and expanded in an instant. It covered a radius of 100 miles. Then the ground cracked and the cracks spread. In the boiling shadow, one eye after another slowly rose along with the viscous darkness. In the huge eyes that were several meters in size, scarlet eyes stared fixedly at the roaring truck. Countless eyeballs connected with each other in the viscous shadow rose and formed a wall that reached all the way to the sky. It encompassed a radius of 100 miles. It turned into a ceiling cage, the threshold of 10,000 eyes. Gregory cursed. This strange seal was actually a change in form when a large horde of hell came together. Once it was activated, it could be seen as a mass of people, and it was extremely difficult to deal with. Every single eyeball was an individual. Their defensive capabilities weren't that high, but no matter how much power they exerted, they would all be concentrated on a single individual. At the cost of the individual's collapse, they would be able to maintain the seal. Tens of thousands of eyes were all consumables. To deal with this thing, the upper limit of the output of a single attack was not important, but the frequency was. And the key point was that this thing was a one-time use. Once it began to change shape, it could not be reversed no matter what. Once a large number of origin substances were used up, the threshold of 10,000 eyes would turn to ash, vanish into thin air, not to mention a small-scale conflict. Even if it was on the border defense line, at a critical moment, such a thing could play an amazing strategic role. But in the end, someone was using it here, just to hold them here. What was it for? What was it for? Why sure angrily slapped the dashboard. What happened to quietly entering the village and not wanting guns? Why was it that as soon as they entered the village, they saw the villagers waiting there with guns in their hands, each holding a Gatling gun, and they were all smiling and waving their hands? Little friend, we've been waiting for you for a long time. Suddenly, they had a subtle feeling that they were being targeted. There was a loud boom. The seal that had risen from the ground was suddenly deformed under the impact of the truck, and then the entire truck was forcefully bounced back. As the sky and earth spun, 2 eyeballs exploded into paste, but the seal of the threshold of 10,000 eyes was as firm as ever. After a short shackle, the strange large group of creatures in the sky finally landed on the ground. Like sticky slurry, they shattered the moment they hit the ground, but quickly wriggled and reformed again, converging towards the truck, entangling the tires and the body of the truck, trying to penetrate through every opening under the shattered dark clouds. The silhouette of a huge bone whale appeared. The rotting whale soared in the sky, and a stooped figure draped in grayish-black hemp clothes stood on the whale, blowing a low horn. And so, countless white dust fell. After falling into the wriggling sludge, it quickly sprouted, grew, and spread. Pale, white bone thorns grew out of the sludge. In the blink of an eye, white bones covered the ground like a forest. Blood-colored fruits fell from the branches, turning into twisted mutants that pounced on the truck without any regard for their own safety. Plague whale cultivators and undead species. First, it was the Withered King's Najilfa fleet, and then it was the Sea of Thunder's signature large group. Gregory, was dumbfounded. But this wasn't the main point. They couldn't even break through the defense of the truck itself. At best, they could only cause some obstruction and trouble. The real key came from the vortex in the sky that was getting bigger and bigger. No matter how you looked at it, it looked like a portal. Chapter 10:12. Thunder shook the sky, and hell rumbled. Under everyone's observation, two large hands suddenly stretched out from the black cloud vortex, abruptly opening up a gap in this desolate hell. Then, a ferocious body, like a mountain range descending from the sky, stretched half of its body out from within. The Mountain of Withering. It was the Hell Vanguard that the King of Withering had given him the title of Hell Vanguard. Just its body alone was large enough to tear hell apart. Even though it was an exaggerated scale from the earth to the sky, only half of its body could reach through the vortex. Dozens of sharp arms were pierced with huge copper nails and entwined with chains. They grew in a disorderly manner on the deformed, mountain-like body, supporting the ground. The shriveled and withered head was covered with eyes that looked in all directions. Then, they locked onto the location of the truck, reaching out, grinning. Through the filthy glass, Huaisher was grinning too. "Since you're in such a hurry to die, I have no choice." He was like a child who had just bought a new toy and was excitedly transforming according to the instruction manual. He could use the new equipment now. He opened Beelzebub's magazine and loaded a pitch-black bullet. Full of anticipation, he aimed at the sky. Then it was pressed down again. "Don't rush. Let me do it." The old alchemist pressed down Huaisher's raised gun with his right hand. He raised his left thumb horizontally in front of his eyes. It was like measuring the safe distance of a nuclear explosion. In the howling hurricane and shadows outside the car, he closed his left eye and adjusted the position of his thumb. In his sight, his thumb happened to cover the waist of the Mountain of Withering, the black cloud vortex that was brewing countless lightning bolts in the sky. On his left hand, the silver ring instantly shrank and disappeared. Then, with a push of his thumb, there was a vibrating sound of friction, as if he was forcefully wiping away the ink dripping on the glass with his finger. It was so uncomfortable, but what was even more shocking was that with Gregory's action, the boundless black clouds in the sky were also scratched open, revealing the pale sky behind. The whirlpool that connected to the outside world disappeared in an instant, followed by a stinky rain of blood falling from the sky. The broken, withering mountain screeched and fell to the ground. Huge internal organs rolled out of the hole in its abdomen and piled up on the ground in a nauseating manner. In the blink of an eye, the withering mountain, which even the carriage cannon of fate could not damage, was sliced in half by his own teleportation gate. The only trace left was a speck of dust on Gregory's thumb. The terrifying lethality of the primordial curse technique was fully displayed here. In just a few seconds, the equipment in the car had started to deteriorate rapidly. However, when Gregory put the ring back on in a flurry, smoke was almost coming out from under the dashboard. The old thing's hands trembled like chicken claws. Yet another shattering sound came from the sky. An even larger shadow appeared in the sky, separated by hell itself. "Let's go," Gregory urged him. "If you don't run now, they'll really drag their families over to do us." "Don't worry, I'll take care of it now." Huaisher turned back and looked at the threshold of 10,000 eyes in front of the train. The Lord of the Flies raised his head and aimed. Then he was pressed down again. It was the second time. S.E. Huaisher turned her head in astonishment and saw her old acquaintance, Engineer Captain Foster, rolling down the window. After he elbowed a mutant that had climbed up, he pulled out a thick ancient book and opened it in front of the threshold of 10,000 eyes blocking the road ahead. "Chandra, come out and get to work." The gilded words of Les Miserables appeared on the book for a moment. In the infinite darkness, the sleeping soul raised its eyes. In the pale sky, a star streaked across like a tear. It disappeared without a trace, along with the threshold of 10,000 eyes. The earth-shattering seal disappeared. In an instant, the pages of the book closed, and the phantoms of countless chains appeared and contracted. Once again, it was put into Forster's arms. At the rear of the truck, flames spurted out again. In an instant, it crushed all the bones, and mud in front of it broke through the restraints, leaped over the canyon, and fell from the other end, leaving behind a trail of dust. The broken mountain of death roared and propped up its body. Several of its arms reached out, trying to grab the escaping truck. But even if it tried to flip over, it could only touch the tail flames of the truck. I'll give you another surprise before you leave. Weisher sneered and raised his muzzle. This time, no one pressed the muzzle of his gun down. But before he could aim, he heard a loud noise from behind the truck. Under the fallen armor, a heavy cannon protruded out, locked on with the radar, and fired at full force. Boom! The Red Dragon's breath bomb blasted a big hole in the open, deformed palm. Blood sprinkled down like rain. It fell slowly. Yay! Raymond cheered and whistled excitedly. The members of the exploration team high-fived and celebrated. Only Weisher still looked back in shock, looking at the enemies in the distance who were gradually left in the dust, and the Lord of the Flies in his hands. That's it. Wasn't there something wrong with it? It was as if the 98K and 8X scope had just been assembled, the Dragon God had not unzipped his pants, and the ADC was still on the way. How could this team be finished? Suddenly, there was a sense of desolation, like a hero who had no place to show off his skills. What's wrong with you people in hell? Is this it? Can't there be another one? Then, until they were about to perform a deep jump, no other opponents appeared. Half an hour later, under the cracked sky, huge chains hung down and hung the mountain of death in the air. Countless kobolds climbed along the chains, dragging the chains as they crawled on the huge body of the mountain of death. Under the command of the doctors, they worked together to piece the broken mountain of death back together, from the internal organs to the outer shell. Soon, the huge Hell Vanguard was complete again, except that there was an additional scar on its body. More and more people from Hell flowed in through the tunnel, spreading throughout the barren Hell. It was through some unknown secret method that interfered with our wind tunnel teleportation. In the end, after ignoring the defense, it directly broke the waste of the mountain of death through the change of depth. After collecting the residual sediment at the scene, the Abyss Jesters analyzed it. No, there are two kinds of elemental traces left at the scene. After obtaining Leucoplakia's records, the group of simulated spirits formed by the alchemists of Helios behind Hades analyzed countless clues. The spirits rose and fell from Hades's box, keenly searching for any traces. Two completely different things. The first is like the authority of a god, but it is actually a simulation of alchemy. It should be a primordial curse. The second is traces of celestial genealogy, which should be the result of refining the elemental. I don't know what other dangerous books Weisher has on him. According to the information provided by the Golden Dawn, Weisher should still have the miraculous mark of the Heavens Inquisition Road, as well as a large group of people who have undergone a qualitative change of elemental. The book he contracted is War and Peace, so we can't rule out the possibility that he has been given the rank of White Dove. Another jester added, just as you said, he is a tricky character. It's not just limited to this time. Hades pondered for a moment, and his expression became gloomy. There was a mistake in the prediction. This time, he is not alone. According to the information we have now, we have to face at least 4 people. At least one of them is an alchemist who has mastered some dangerous arcana, and another is an ascendant of the eternal road of celestial genealogy. It could also be a modified Osiris, and the most troublesome one, the Sword of Calamity. At this time, such a powerful person coming to hell at this time, there must be a purpose. Tiancheng, who was waiting for a response in the dream, understood and looked at the other jester. Any reaction from the present realm? No. After the defense line was activated, there was no news. There was no extra movement, and they are still setting up the defense. It is strange that there is no reaction, Tiancheng muttered to himself. Unless the internal strife and conflict between the command and celestial genealogy is irreconcilable, otherwise, if the name of celestial genealogy is in danger at the observable depth, even if it is just to deal with it, they should send 2 search and rescue teams. Unless they have abandoned them from the beginning, or do they think that this is just a coincidence, and our attack will not endanger their safety? Both possibilities are strange. Hades, you are right, there is indeed a problem. Then what should we do next? Hades asked in return. The price I have paid is probably not enough to do anything further. No, I will allocate resources to you next. Tiancheng pondered for a moment and made a decision. You continue to chase. It is only half an hour. They can't have gone far. 15 minutes later, depth 12, Infernal Barren Beach. On the dry seabed, there were traces of gravel and salt everywhere. Huaisher, who had just finished a deep jump, did not even have time to catch his breath when he saw a haze appear in the sky again. There was a powerful wave of energy that was transmitted from several depths, wishing to open the gate. Is there an end to this? Huaisher was dumbfounded. They can even catch up with this? What is going on? Before he finished speaking, he realized that everyone was looking at him in unison, and he fell into a daze. Think about it carefully. We are a secret exploration team. Even if we are carrying some treasure, it doesn't make sense for us to be hit by cannons as soon as we enter Infernal. Forster, the chief engineer, was the first to speak. And after the attack, they still have to cooperate with Tank Bu. They are still chasing after us even after we run away. This is obviously a grudge, Gregory added. Although it is not appropriate to say this, Teacher Huaisher, you may have underestimated your ability to attract hatred. The old professor, Anton, who was purely a passerby, analyzed everything. Is it possible? Raymond finally looked over with an exasperated look. Think about it carefully. Who have you offended? Why is it my fault? Huaisher was furious. I am such a good person who is kind to others. It is just going to Infernal. How can I be targeted by so many people? I have only offended a few elements of destruction, 7 or 8 rulers, more than a dozen illegal orders, some messy infernal organizations, some infernal paradise, the infernal workshop master, the abyss jester. Stop! Gregory interrupted him. He could not listen to it anymore. Are you reciting the names of dishes here? Are you saying that you have enemies everywhere in Infernal? How can there be someone more annoying than Russell when he was young? Among these things, ordinary people who offended even one of them would die without a burial place. How can someone be alive and kicking when he is about to become the public enemy of Infernal? But at least now he could understand what was going on. Infernal Blacklist. Chapter 10:13. Blacklist. In the present realm, it was the infamous bounty in hell. It was started by the followers of the Pied Piper and the jesters of the abyss who were spread all over hell. It was similar to the wanted list of the Astronomy Association, so it was often used by all kinds of strange characters as a standard for comparison. The people who were recorded on the list were usually people who had a large bounty on them after offending various forces. In hell, For example, Chuhai, Chuhai, and Chuhai. After all, there was only one natural enemy who liked to go to hell for no reason, and it was the most annoying natural enemy. Of course, as an authoritative bounty list in hell, its function was definitely not just to change the ranking in real time and make a record. It was also an authoritative relic. Through the connection of countless blacklists, it formed a web of authority that covered hell. It should be the jesters of the abyss who started the bounty through their own blacklists. Gregory said with understanding, "That list has the authority of the Pied Piper. As long as you are in hell, the list will react. You should be under the insight command by the 6 jesters of the abyss. The aggro needle will lock onto your position, and you won't be able to hide for 3 days." Then what should we do? Huaishur sighed and looked at the dark clouds in the sky that were getting bigger and bigger. He took out Lord of the Flies and pulled the bolt. After thinking about it, we can only fight with them. Wait, damn, slow down, slow down. Gregory rushed forward and pressed the muzzle down. "Why are you in such a hurry? Aren't you great seeming? Give me an afterimage first, the best one. Hurry up." Huaishur didn't understand, but he still did as he was told. Soon, a silhouette like him appeared in the shadow and stood in front of Gregory, lifelike. "Huaishur?" the old alchemist suddenly asked. Huaishur and the afterimage asked in confusion. The double voice spread. "What is it?" As soon as he finished speaking, a clear sound was heard. Gregory bent his fingers, and Huaishur felt his body lighten, while his shadow suddenly sank. His originally sluggish appearance suddenly became agile, as if he was another Huaishur in high spirits. A portion of Huaishur's origin substance was transferred to his own afterimage. It was as if he had been given life. "Io, this feels pretty good." Huaishur stretched his neck and looked around. His body quickly showed signs of solidification and distortion. "Not bad. Living in hell is really The old alchemist snapped his fingers, and Huaishur's afterimage instantly shrank, turning into a palm-sized statue of a dog's head that fell from the air. Gregory looked at him for a moment, then looked at Huaishur with a look that said, "I knew you weren't human." To be honest, this is the first time I've seen something so grotesque after the mutation. Even though he was complaining, his hands didn't stop moving. He pushed open the door and quickly drew out a strange-looking sacrificial ritual on the ground, then placed the statue on top of it. He clapped his hands. A white light flashed, and the statue disappeared without a trace. The dark clouds in the sky also disappeared instantly. Huaishur, however, heard an illusory chewing sound. His hair stood on end. "What's going on?" Huaishur asked. "It's nothing. I just performed a simple sacrificial ritual and threw your substitute into the blessed land." Gregory clapped his hands calmly. When they opened the door and realized that they're in the stomach, they should be temporarily free. Huaishur was dumbfounded. For a moment, he didn't know if he should be furious or grateful. This method of redirecting trouble to someone else was too strange. Also, didn't you feed my origin substance and shadow to the ranch master just now? How could you be so immoral? But there really wasn't a better method in a hurry, so he could only do this. Other than Beelzebub, who didn't get a chance to go on stage and was still cursing, everyone else was very satisfied. "So, we're free from trouble?" Huaishur asked. "That depends on how much they hate you." Gregory replied. "Even though the Insight Command has a 10-day buffer, he can invite another 6 people to give you another one in 3 days. You should be prepared. Substitutes aren't as effective once you're on guard. Next time, they can also teleport." He paused and glanced at Huaishur, who was even more hellish than a hellish creature, and swallowed the word curse back into his stomach. Unless a few rulers who were proficient in curses personally cast them, most curses would become nourishment in this guy's mouth. Even so, offending the Abyss Jester was still a headache. Those bastards are very difficult to deal with. Offending one is the same as offending a group of them, especially since they like to fight on stage themselves and also like to shake. He paused again, but didn't say the word people. He had nothing to say. He only looked at Huaisher strangely. What kind of mutant was this? Why did it feel more and more like this guy was the same as the one in front of him? Huh, what's wrong? A certain someone who didn't know how annoying he was ate the melon seeds he stole from the old alchemist and said excitedly, "Why are you only talking halfway? Continue, continue." Not only did he eat them himself, but he also ate them to feed the little white mouse that came out of his pocket. In the blink of an eye, 1/2 kilogram was almost gone. Not to mention the Abyss Jester. Even Gregory wanted to kill him. He had only brought 5 kilograms of melon seeds, and it wasn't enough even if he ate them sparingly. In the end, with Huaisher taking the lead, 1/2 of them were instantly eaten for free. He was furious. The main thing was this guy didn't understand the seriousness of the situation at all. An existence like the Abyss Jester was never used to fight alone. As believers of the element of destruction, the Pied Piper, these people came from different backgrounds and covered almost every corner of the present realm, the borders, and hell, whether they were the leaders of large groups, mutants, humans, or even other beasts. As long as they pursued the wisdom of the abyss, they could receive the Pied Piper's blessings and obtain the qualifications to enter the eternal dream. In the present realm literature, these were the members of the legendary Hell's Chat group. Among them, there was no lack of strong rulers, but there were also fragile existences who couldn't stand the wind and rain and could only survive in a thermostat bottle. But in the end, these guys were never known for their strength, but for relying on stronger people. Most of the time, in all sorts of hells and complicated environments, this group of people would appear in the capacity of support. They provided various solutions to various rulers and various large forces, and even participated in them personally, pledging their loyalty to the great existence and contributing their strength. This was a group of people who could perfectly cameo in important positions such as HR, product managers, operations, finance, and so on in Hell's monopolies. Things were precious when they were rare. In Hell, there were 9.5 out of 10 people who could fight. However, there were far too few people who had brains. It was because of their outstanding abilities that they could provide irreplaceable help to the rulers, that they could hold important mid-level or even high-level positions in various forces. Once a contract was signed, it would be 100% carried out. Who wouldn't love it if it was cheap and easy to use? What was worse was that this group of people was extremely united and rarely had internal strife or losses, other than a small number of times where they were enemies due to the forces they belonged to. Most of the time, they worked together for mutual benefit. This was a large network of power that covered the entire abyss. Offending one of them was offending all of them. All creatures on the blacklist would receive the hostility of all the abyss ministers, along with the forces behind them. After a long time, even the rulers began to issue rewards through the list. Of course, if you were as strong as Chu Hai, you naturally wouldn't care. Occasionally, when you were unhappy, you could even call 2 abyss ministers to kowtow to you for fun. Other than hiding in bed and biting handkerchiefs and stabbing little people, they had no other choice. But Huaisher looked at his own dog-hearted and dog-faced appearance and felt that he didn't deserve such treatment. Didn't I just go to Helios? Why? Huaisher was angry. Even the invitation was sent to me by them. How can I be on the blacklist just because I went there to study? He. Raymond sneered at the side, too lazy to speak. Blacklist? After Forster finished eating sunflower seeds, he slapped his head. Last month, I bought a dungeon in the collection of sins. As he spoke, He took out a scroll from his pocket and opened it expectantly. Wait for me to see. What the F***CK? Why is your ranking so high? The chief engineer was shocked, speechless. In the vast list, it only took an instant to search for why sure. It wasn't because this thing was shockingly efficient, but because Hell's Bounty 91st. In just a few hours, he was in the top 100 of the entire abyss, and he had the potential to go even further. In front of him was the head knight of the Temple Knights of the Russian Federation, who burned, killed, and looted 7 or 8 times a day in hell. Behind him was the traitor crown wearer, who stole the Stormhorn from the Thunder Pirates. Most of the Tier 5s were ranked in the top 1 or 200, and in the top 100, only Huaishur was a Tier 3, and he was the only one who had a bounty of at least 80 hells on his head. Even if the bounty alone wasn't a lot, when stacked together, it was a frightening amount. He could be called a rising star in the crowdfunding world. From the blessed lands to the desolate kingdoms, from the borders to the infernal realm. As long as he obtained Huaishur's head, he would be able to exchange it for an endless supply of origin crystals and treasures in at least 20 different infernal realms. Even the Purgatory Workshop owners alone contributed half of the bounty. Looking carefully, there were also the Hell Music Association and the Cooking Demon Competition Committee. Both sides had offered 2 bounties, asking to capture him alive. If they caught him, they could deliver him to them. The price was negotiable. It was equivalent to providing a little protection that was better than nothing. But Huaishur felt that they just wanted to lock him up, put some spices and curses, and wait for him to solidify to join their happy family in hell. It could only be said that the reason behind it was chilling. No one wanted him to have a good life. Why was he targeted as soon as he went out? Why don't we split up and go back to the ivory tower first? Huaishur looked up and sighed. I don't want to do this anymore. Chapter 1014. Half an hour later, a tragic shriek rang out from the dark abyss of the sea. Under the pull of countless chains, the twitching and spasming mountain of death finally crawled out of the sea. To be exact, from the endless gastric juice. Only a rapidly decaying skeleton was left, and the remaining muscles were spasming and twitching. As early as half an hour ago, the moment the portal opened, the crown wearer, eager for revenge, roared and rushed through the portal. After half of his body had crawled through, he finally realized that something was wrong. He slammed on the brakes and tried to retreat. Unfortunately, it was too late. The duck neck was already in his mouth, so how could he let it go? In less than half a minute, it was already like this when a large group of people pulled it out of the blessed land. Hades looked coldly at the dying mutant and did not say anything. He just waved his hand. Soon, a large number of living creatures were dumped into the rapidly rising sea of gastric juice behind the portal. The rancher was a generous and tolerant god, and he did not care about the offense of the jesters at the table. In order to compensate for the missing dessert on the noble's plate, they compensated with 4 large groups of hell. Fortunately, he was not picky, and the only thing he got was the sculpture in Hades's hand that was full of cracks and pointing a middle finger at the intruders. It vividly conveyed the taunts from afar to the attackers. Crack! With a crisp sound, the sculpture was crushed by Hades. The alchemist was still expressionless. He found us. He turned back and said, "What happens next may not be simple." That's true, but we have more important things to do. We can't ignore the situation of the War of the Worlds because of one person. Leukoplakia conveyed the judgment of other colleagues. According to a conservative estimate, we just need to drive him into the depths of hell and let him do whatever he wants. There will be terror in the endless abyss. The depths are indeed a threat, but we can't expect such a person to drown in the sea. Leukoplakia is a killer whale, and the deep sea of hell is his home. Hades shook his head. It's not enough to just drive him away from the front lines. It's too careless to leave a dangerous factor outside. Someone has to come and suppress him, and it's best to chase after him. If he possesses the destructive power you speak of, then we must not slack off. This is your proposal, so I'll leave it to you. Any other questions? No. Hades shook his head. Very good. Tiancheng and the clown are very impressed with your determination. Praise is meaningless. Don't worry. There will be sufficient power for you to deploy. At the same time, I will introduce you to someone. Leucoplakia smiled mysteriously and stepped aside. In the endless wasteland, the ferocious mechanical beast slowly walked out with the high temperature of the furnace. On the back of the aberrant mechanical species, the hunchbacked workshop master from Purgatory grinned, took off the hat on his head, and smiled at him. It seems that we now have a common enemy, Mr. Hades. Perhaps. Hades asked, then what can you bring me? First, I'll present you with an insignificant gift. The workshop master laughed hoarsely and took out a bright red rose from his bosom. The rose's petals still seemed to be stained with dew, but the enchanting flower and its barbed stem shone with a metallic glow. Soon, as he closed his fingers, the rose was crushed. The sharp barbs pierced into the workshop master's fingers, but juice mixed with blood, and the fragrance of the flower flowed out from the gaps between his fingers. Drops of sweet rain fell on the remains of the mountain of withering. The mountain-like skeleton began to tremble violently. A painful roar burst out from the remaining head. It was filled with fear and despair. Blazing flames gushed out from its eyes, mouth, and nose, while spots of metallic light quickly sprouted from its limbs, quickly mending the damaged flesh. Steam, flames, and even pitch-black engine oil gushed out from the steel-like flesh. Lava-like blood flowed in the oil pipe-like blood vessels, and the corroded organs were reborn in a twisted mechanical manner. In the end, the hideous mountain of iron light wailed and crawled in front of Hades. On the face covered in heavy armor, only eternal resentment and anger burned in the 6 steel pupils. The reflection in the pupils revealed Hades's cold smile. Depth 13. Sweet rain paradise in the storm filled with pungent poisonous gas. The overwhelming acid rain covered everything. The rainwater flowed and gathered into a river, surging and surging. The corroded and fragile sandstone kept collapsing and falling into the acid, white smoke rising. Under the steel canopy that covered hundreds of meters, Huaishur was holding his chin and looking at the wet stones under his feet, at the holes that had just been drilled out. He was waiting for the seeds to germinate. The pots and pans next to him were already set up, waiting for the vegetables to be planted. After such a long time, Huaishur's Hell's Survival Guide had reached its 4th edition, and the new and improved seeds had been jointly launched by Mount Tai. It was said that the sales had exploded among the Hell's Blazers, and even the Federal Bureau of Investigation had purchased some of the seeds and supplied them to their subordinate departments. It was said that the ascendants of Mount Tai were no longer satisfied with the level of harvest after planting it, and the next development goal of the next edition was to find a place to plant it and quickly advance to 4 dishes and 1 soup. It could only be said that these guys were a little too passionate about farming. A few minutes later, a continuous crackling sound could be heard from beneath their feet. The germinating seeds were rapidly growing as they absorbed the acid and the precipitate of hell. They had entered the predetermined stage of mutation. After rapidly growing roots that were tens of meters long, the flower buds that were constantly trying to bite people began to swell. In the end, they became several crops that resembled corn. The abyss sediment was all concentrated on the leaves outside, and the inside was the edible part. After being processed by Huaishur, the remaining toxicity and residue were removed. Although the taste was still delicious, at least there was something to eat in hell. In fact, Sure could make something better, but no one dared to eat the glowing stuff, so he could only regretfully give up. After a simple meal, no one let down their guard. After observing the situation for 2 hours and confirming that there were no traces of any pursuers, Sure finally breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that we are safe for the time being. Everyone can rest for a few hours. As for the sentry post, Raymond and Mr. Forster will take over. Mr. Gregory will rest, and Professor Anton, and I will check the condition of the car. Everyone went about their duties. After putting on the gas masks, Professor Anton took the lead, picked up the wind lantern, and walked out of the car to start his work. Although he was already old, the old professor's skills were more agile than many young people. He had an 8-pack and was full of martial arts ethics. He still held the position of a judge in the school's full-armor combat club. With a wrench and screwdriver in hand, it was not a problem for him to kill 1 or 2 mutants. Sure followed behind and did not have to worry about the old professor accidentally spraining his back. He only had to be responsible for assisting and passing the tools. It's not too big of a problem. The internal stress of the outer armor is a bit out of control, and a few weak points have appeared. Later on, the high temperature will be adjusted again. The wear on the tires is also much lighter than expected. Behind the huge blood-stained truck, Anton raised the wind lantern and swept it around, patting the red dragon's body. This little guy is still healthy. The body of the car shook slightly, as if in response to Professor Anton's words. No matter how awesome the driver was, he would not dare to offend his own maintenance division, not to mention the red dragon itself, who was directly being repaired. He would not dare to talk bad in front of the old professor. It was extremely obedient. Originally, it was expected that we would do maintenance at 4 depths, but now it seems that the actual situation is much more optimistic. If we don't engage in high-intensity battles, our current reserves are more than enough. But I'm afraid that kind of naive thinking is simply unrealistic. After checking all the reserves, Professor Anton turned around and said to him, "What we do next depends on your orders. Sure. Fighting alone, losing support, pursuers behind, no road ahead." In the end, Sure could not help but sigh. It sounds really bleak. After all, this is hell. No matter how difficult the situation is, it won't be strange. Anton calmly stared at the curtain of acid rain outside the canopy. In the eternally barren world, there were no traces of civilization other than the lights here. There were only eternal dark clouds above the sky. Even if one passed through the dark clouds, there were no stars behind them, only a deep void that led to other abysses. They were already in a place far away from the present, in the wreckage of a world that had died countless years ago. In the countless hells, there were very few that had life, or that could see anything that could move. Most of them were in such a dangerous and complicated environment, empty and dead wilderness. Perhaps there were still some secrets buried underground, or perhaps there was actually nothing. Even if everyone found out the next day that there were actually pieces of flesh and blood behind the cracked crust, they would not be surprised. Anything that happened would be expected. This was hell. Sometimes, even if you prepared 10 times more, you might not be able to use it. But if you could use it, you would feel that your previous preparations were completely insufficient. The unknown was the most terrifying. Now, the problem in front of Sure was not the supply of supplies, but the plan that had to be changed. Because of the bounty offered by the Abyss Jester, they had prematurely left the deep stealth and deviated from the established route. They had to correct it, or simply draw a new route according to the existing map. Otherwise, if they continued to walk blindly, they would only get lost in the abyss. And the silver lining was that because of the deep tide and the Golden Dawn's stairway to hell, the connections between the countless hells became closer and closer. They did not have to go through the trouble of deep stealth. They could directly open a path at the weak points of the connections, and even physical connections between several hells would appear. And that was the problem. There was no path that could allow Weisher and the others to quietly return to the original planned route, around this area of hell known as the Rain Paradise. The deeper they went, they were close to the front lines of the War of the Worlds, and at the same time, it was the most dangerous place. And the three surrounding routes were all routes that led to the several rulers' armies. And further down, further down, it would be hell, the Thunder White Plains, where many group leaders were gathered and treated as a large transit station. There were wolves in front, tigers behind, dangerous cliffs on both sides, and sharks swimming in the deep waters below. This was the situation they were facing now. No matter how I look at it, it's a dead end. After the break, during the impromptu meeting, Raymond rubbed the stubble on his chin and sighed helplessly. Is there no safe route for us to quietly pass by? Unless you wait here for another 2 weeks. Forster, the chief engineer, shook his head regretfully. He was responsible for calculating the depth map according to the signal from the lighthouse. The real-time changes of countless hells were in his mind. If he said there was no route, then there definitely wasn't. If he said 2 weeks, then not a day less. But if they really waited here for 2 weeks, they would probably be cold to the bone. How could they leave? Weisher pondered for a moment and said directly, if there's no other way, we can only go down. For a moment, everyone looked up. There was dead silence. Are you crazy? Raymond, we don't have to walk down the path of death. Who knows how many large groups there are in the lightning white plains right now? How can we avoid such a large truck? If we can't avoid it, then we won't avoid it. If we can't avoid it, then we won't spare it. Nonsense. If we don't avoid it, are we going to swagger? Wait, it can't be, right? Raymond seemed to understand something, and his face twitched. Numb. In the silence, Weisher rubbed his small hands and revealed a local smile. You're tuning into the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.